I've repeated myself many times during select board meetings that it is important to have discussions of the issues brought before and by the select board. The reason I keep repeating myself is because nothing has been done to improve communications. I'd like the opportunity to have a discussion because many times questions have been asked and not answered. And many times the select board members have had the last word and community comment has been silenced. Just take the meeting of October 4th. Mr. Cadillac tried to get the chairman's attention to make a comment during the DEIC report discussion, but the chair told him that no more comments were being taken. I also had a question, but knew it was not going to be allowed, which is why I'm going to ask it now. During the select board meeting discussion of the DEIC report and recommendations, Himajah made a comment with no details to back it up. She said, I want to note that there were some pretty harmful things that were said today. Harmful. This is exactly why we need to continue to have this on the agenda. There are still so many misconceptions and so much misunderstanding in our community around the importance of talking about diversity, equity, and inclusion. I do agree with you that we should be talking about it. So please, answer my specific question. What were the harmful statements made during the October 4th meeting? Were the statements actually harmful, or were they statements just offering an opinion that was different from yours? If this is not answered now, when could it be discussed? And by the way, why aren't we also concerned with diversity of thought? Another word for freedom of speech. Thank you. Can you answer that?
No, you can, if you're done, that's fine. She can answer during her member minute if she wants. We don't usually answer questions now.
Or I will send an email to the board.
Sure.
And if you can, I'll be more than happy to talk to you on the phone, take out to coffee, for lunch. I just wanted to get a better understanding of what was harmful. Thank you.
Thank you. Charlie?
One second. I'm Charlie Cadillac, Portland Road. I want to continue a comment I was going to make at your last meeting, where you, Mr. Martin, made a fairly long speech about your reasons for wanting to have the membership of DEIC be blacks and people that have come here from other countries. During that speech, you made the following statement. If we made the DEIC proportional to the population in town and made it more than 2/3 white, those 2/3 white people don't have any experience in any discrimination. That's just what you said. First of all, a minor point. You're saying the DEIC must not be proportional to the population as opposed to everything else that I suppose we will hear must be made proportional. But that's a sort of a minor point. You refer to white people. That's a quintessential use of skin color as a racist comment. White people. And you dismiss them as being incapable, apparently, of any knowledge, experience in discrimination. That's several thousand, 10,000 perhaps, of the population of this town. And I am one of them. Now, I am not going to speculate about the experiences of the other thousands, But I can tell you that your statement that I don't have any experience in any discrimination is not true. You basically don't know anything about me, but you're willing to make that statement. That's wrong. What you're doing is perpetuating the differences of opinion in this town, not solving the race problem, but perpetuating it. That's also wrong. So I don't know what your reasons are. Everybody can decide on their own. But to dismiss the majority of the town the way you did by their skin color, I find it very difficult for anyone on this board to support that statement, and I hope nobody does. Thank you.
Thank you. Matt, can you call the people online, please?
Absolutely. First up, we have Franny Osmond.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes.
I'm agreeing with Leo that we have sometimes communication problems, but it's a different type. And
I continue to see no change in the setup of select board meetings, and I'm here to again say that I don't feel that the citizenry, the public, has full participation. We can't see who's in the room. We can't see who else is listening in on the Zoom, which is analogous to being in the room. You could have a screen showing you what's happening in the room. Right now, we just see you, and it's even slightly hard to hear the other people. So I'm going to keep reiterating until there's better participation by the public in our select board meetings. Thank you. Bye.
Thank you. Matt, please go ahead.
We have Sarah Weber.
Sarah, please go ahead. Sarah, we can't hear you if you're speaking. She may be having a problem with her microphone or something. Matt, can we go to the next person, please?
Certainly. Next, we've got call-in user number 1.
Hi, this is Tara from West Acton. Can you hear me?
Yes, thank you.
Yes. So based on the comments I just heard about the racism or lack thereof, or, representation of the majority being, important to consider, I think that this is really a great opportunity to, it's a great evidence of the need for anti-bias training. So, and maybe the public would like to enjoy some of that together as a group, and we can discuss afterwards. My comment actually was about the ARPA funding, and to see if you're going to allow comment about the ARPA funding during the ARPA funding agenda item.
Yeah, I may allow short comments at that time.
When you say you may, then that may mean that, or it will, could very well mean that this is our last opportunity to make that comment here in the residents' concern portion of the agenda.
Yeah, I just said me because I was just giving myself a little room depending on the schedule of the meeting. Yeah, I will allow short comments at that time.
Thank you so much.
Matt, do you want to try Sarah Weber one more time?
Certainly. It looks like Sarah is unmuted. Sarah, would you like to try again?
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Perfect. So this is Sarah Weber, 9 Tupelo Way, Acton. I have lived for 20 years.
So your microphone is very bad. We can hear you sometimes. I don't know if you're leaning away from your microphone or.
I'm on my mobile phone.
Okay, it's better now.
Okay, I'll try this again.
It looks like you're muted again, Sarah.
Yeah, I muted because I called in by phone as well. I'm just trying to get this to work. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, great. I'll speak up loud. Sarah Weber, 9 Tupelo Way in Acton. I've been a resident for 29 years. And my question, I emailed the select board either last week or the week before. I'd like to find out how I go about getting the Elm Street tennis courts converted into pickleball courts.
So, this is not a time for questions. You can make your remarks that you'd like to see them turned into pickleball courts.
Okay, I will do that. I would love to see them turned into pickleball courts. We have a great showing that comes out Wednesday evenings to play. The courts themselves are very much cracked, and it would be a great time to turn that into pickleball. There are no other public pickleball courts in Acton, and it is the #1 growing sport in the country, and I would love to see those turned into pickleball courts.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, next up, it looks like we've got Stella. Stella, you should be unmuted, or you should be able to unmute.
Hi, Stella Coe, 11 Guswood Road. And I just wanted to say how much I appreciated the support for the DEIC at the last meeting and all of the discussion. And I didn't hear all of the earlier comments, just part of them, but I was very discouraged to hear what an earlier commenter had to say. And I think that our current DIC may not speak, of course, for all of us, but does a wonderful job representing voices that are not heard. And I think that we've done a good job. Of course, we can improve, but I hope we continue with the DEIC. Thank you.
Thank you.
Next up, we've got Linda. Linda, you may go ahead.
Linda Vieira, North Acton, and I would like to bring up the possibility of having some kind of mailing go out to all the voters in Acton to let them know when the town election is and who's running, because there's absolutely no publicity provided by the town, and even on the website there's not a list of candidates and who's running. So I'd like to I sent in a request to the select board, and I'd like to see if that is something that some of the money that we've been given can go to for a mailing, especially since the election this year is not going to be at the usual time that it is. Please consider making the elections more publicity so that you can have a greater turnout and more people will be participating in the town. Thank you.
Thank you. I just want to say three things about, three clarifications on that. The date of the election is the same as usual. The date of the town meeting is not. So that the date of the election next year will be the last Tuesday in March. The date of town meeting is May 16th, which is more than a month later than usual. We were looking into moving the election
already on the town calendar. Linda is absolutely correct that in previous years, we have not always had those on the calendar, but they are already on the calendar. And finally, we can check with the town clerk, will be on a little bit later with us, but I believe it's possible for everyone now to get a ballot mailed to them for every election in any given year. So We may not need notification postcards. Everybody can get the ballot directly. Thank you. If you want to speak, please go to the podium. And once there's no line at the podium, I just am ending public comment. So please don't wait at your seat. If you'd like to speak, please go up here. Please line up here. Hi.
My name is Madeline Cruz. I reside at 2 Townhouse Lane in Acton since October of 2015. The apartment I live in is a part of Yankee Village condominiums, but it is owned by the town, the Acton Housing Authority, along with 2 other units in the vicinity. Sorry. I reside in my 2-bedroom apartment with my 3 children, ages 15, 6, and 1, and my fiance who moved in and was added to my lease September of 2018. My reason for writing this letter is to share my story of how the Acton Housing Authority has discriminated against my family and I, but to also express the poor conditions of the unit that needs major renovation and how we've been denied the right to being treated fairly and with dignity in a non-biased, non-discriminating way as any other human being. This is a call for help. I would like justice for how wrongly we have been treated. This is a plea to be treated with basic human decency. No person of any color, race, shape, economic levels, sexuality, religious beliefs, and/or any disability should be treated the way my children, fiance, and I have. Acton Housing Authority should not provide basic human decency only when it's forced by law. It should be the standard. I cannot remember exact dates. However, sometime in 2011, I applied for housing here in Acton and waited. It was when I had my second daughter in October of 2014, I started to truly struggle with finances. When I went back to the Acton Housing Authority to ask about my status of my application, I was informed I had no application. This made no sense to me. I was asked to resubmit a new application and was then again added to a waiting list. After a year, I was offered this unit where I live now. I was given the opportunity to look at the apartment before accepting it. I had immediate concerns. It was on the 3rd floor, as I was a single mother of 2 children under the ages of 10. As any parent can attest to, carrying a stroller or car seat up and down 3 flights of stairs with a second child in tow multiple times a day poses a significant challenge. However, my biggest concern was the carpet. It was clearly very old. I have severe asthma with many triggers, one which is carpet fibers and dust. The carpet itself was at least 15 years old, adding to allergens it produces. When I brought up my concerns, I was told that if I did not take the apartment, I would be moved to the bottom of the list, and it would take years before they had another unit available for my daughters and I. I was a single mother paying $12,000 in rent a month. I only brought home about $410 a week after taxes. I had to put my health and other concerns aside and do what was right for my daughters. I had already waited 4 years for this opportunity, and I had no choice but to accept. I moved in 2015. Less than a month after moving in, my true nightmare started. The tenant below me, who was also an Acton Housing Authority tenant, started harassing us. She made noise complaints. If you have ever lived in one of these units, you know the ceilings are thin. You can hear the footsteps of your neighbors above you. Yet she complained about my footsteps earlier in the morning when I would get up to go to work at 4:30 a.m. She complained about my daughter's playing. She complained about people visiting me. She complained about everything. She complained at every opportunity. Each day, the harassments escalated. The tenants sent strangers, unknown non-tenants, to harass my daughters and I. I avoided going home because of the constant harassment. Doing so caused me to go into one of the greatest financial burdens I have ever experienced. I bought a car in February of 2017, and because I avoided going home, by December of 2017, I already had put 30,000 miles in my new car. It wasn't literally a year, and my engine blew. I could not even cook because of the way I was being accused of the things that were beyond my control. If I cooked while my children played in the living room, she would bang my door and complain about my footsteps in the kitchen and the sounds of my daughters playing, and reported me to housing. Housing would send letters threatening eviction. The harassment was daily. She used objects to pound on the ceiling so we could hear and feel them above. She would bang on my door. She told me that the Acton Housing Authority had informed her that the best thing to do was call the cops on me. She told me that the Acton Housing Authority informed her that the best thing to do was to call the cops on me because they would be a third party. We all know calling the cops would have put me at risk for eviction. Acton Housing Authority supported the harassments with calls, phone calls, letters, and emails. This tenant caused my children and I to become depressed and hopeless. She even used the fact that her sister was an Acton police officer to intimidate me. My final breaking point was when this tenant opened her door as my daughters and I were leaving to go do laundry in Chelmsford, and she began screaming at me in the hallway in front of my daughters. She called me degrading names. Her body language that day scared me. I do believe she meant to do bodily harm to me and my children. This was the day I went to the police station and filed a complaint. I emailed the director of the Housing Authority. While every complaint the tenant made against me was supported, Acton Housing has to this day never responded to the police report. None of these incidents, emails, calls, biased treatment, discrimination, harassment, lies, and undignifying ways that my children, fiancé, and I have been treated should be acceptable. Here are some more of the awful, unfair things that have happened to me. Also, special rules seem to have been put in place that apparently only applies to my family and I. Based on the report from this tenant, I was sent a letter April of 2016 from the Acton Housing Authority accusing me of having a man in my unit playing video console games at 11 o'clock at night. In 2016, I was single. I did not even own or have any game system in my unit. Also, I was never up at 11 p.m. because I had to be at work for 5:30. My daughters were in bed by 8. I was told by the housing I was not allowed to have any visitors without providing names, addresses prior to their visit. At that time, I occasionally worked evenings and had my family members watch my daughters. My family was worried about being targeted by Acton Housing Authority. The neighbor, the police would no longer babysit because of that. I had to take my daughters to be cared for somewhere else from home on my working weekends. It became depressing not seeing my babies for 2 days twice a month because they could not be babysat at our home. I became a mom to have my children spend time with me. I enjoy my children. No one can ever bring back those lost moments for me. Acton Housing Authority accused me of disturbing the peace for vacuuming at 4 p.m. I was told I was not allowed to vacuum. Facing eviction, I had to stop vacuuming to accommodate this tenant. My asthma and allergies got worse, and not to mention that the carpets became disgusting. The building I live in is old and has plumbing issues. At any given time, including today, a leak is being investigated. At least twice a year, we get a letter from the water company stating that there is a leak of unknown origin in our building. However, I've been accused of purposely flushing clogged toilets, which caused water damage to the apartment below. I was not home when these incidents happened. I had to stop flushing toilet paper after normal use because I was and still am petrified of being accused of purposely causing issues with overflowing and leaks into my apartment or the one below. It is disgusting to have trash can in my bathroom to throw away poopy toilet papers because the negligence of a landlord fixing the plumbing issue. Acton Housing Authority has sent me unprofessional, biased, unfair letters, emails, leaving voicemails accusing me of issues of broken piping, bad plumbing, and improperly sealed, unattached toilet. We had a meeting on June 19th about the toilet issue. I recommended that the Acton Housing Authority, instead of openly accusing my family and I of flushing a clogged toilet when we are not home or purposely causing leaks as if we were idiots, to please have someone go and check the seal or the flagell. The Acton Housing Authority stated director stated that in her 14 years of being a director, she had never heard of or seen a toilet clog or have water leaks, etc., because of a seal or a flagell. She told us it was our fault and we needed to stop causing clogs. To be clear, each time there was a leak, housing would come into my home and check the toilet. We were not home at these times. No foreign objects were ever found in my toilet. How was she to know, or better yet, what right did she have to accuse us? I was mortified that she actually told my fiance and I during the meeting that we were at fault of these issues. Needless to say, she told my fiance she would have one of her maintenance workers come the next week, and no one ever showed up. It has taken 2 years for this issue to be somewhat resolved, and that is because the inspector that came on June 18, 2021, and even after, when the Acton Board of Health, however, we still cannot flush toilet paper down our toilet. The entire time, the toilet was very obviously not sealed and completely unattached from the floor. The toilet basically was sitting unattached on a hole in the floor. Unsurprisingly, the inspector found the toilet was broken and would cause flooding when used normally. Another time, and again, the Acton Housing Authority accused me of doing it. How do I control old pipes from bursting? How am I supposed to report something when I am not home? I arrived home at 6 p.m. and it was the tenant below me that informed me of what happened. She told me that the Acton Housing Authority went into my unit, emergency or not. I have a right to know when someone comes inside my home. I was never informed by a call at the time it happened. I had not had a working refrigerator since I moved in. Instead, every year they would just change the gasket around the fridge door and ignore me when I told them that my food was freezing. It didn't matter if I changed my setting to below 5 or above. It would either freeze everything completely or it would just freeze what was in the back. I had to choose to have either no food inside, just milk perfectly positioned at a setting of 5 so it would not spoil. This, however, was not practical. I threw hundreds of dollars, if not thousands, away because the food would freeze. It wasn't until September 29th of this year, 2021, that they replaced the refrigerator, and that is due to the fact that I complained to the Acton Board of Health. The Acton Housing Authority has had an inspector come to do yearly inspections in 2019, 2020 inside the unit. The inspector told me that I needed to clean my stove. I told him I do clean, but I can't control stains that have been there since before I moved in. Burnt stains. It is an old, small stove. The stove is so small I cannot fit a normal baking sheet inside. I cannot even cook a normal turkey. The stove needs to be replaced with a modern-sized stove. It doesn't have to be fancy, just a normal one. He said I needed to do a deep clean of my carpet. I gave him the history behind and told him I could not vacuum because it was disturbing the peace of the tenant that used to live in the unit below. He did not listen to my concerns of the mold issues in the bathroom or how the fridge was freezing my food. Nothing that I mentioned to him regarding my concern was acknowledged. Finally, I had another inspector this year in June 18th of 2021. He gave the Acton Housing Authority maintenance staff immediate orders in my presence of the things that needed attention for fixing, and only a few were done. One thing he mentioned were calling a plumber in because the toilet was moving, and I told him about the leaks, the water issues coming from the toilet, and also how I could not flush toilet paper down the toilet. He mentioned repairing or fixing the refrigerator, fixing the broken cabinet drawers in the kitchen, fixing the broken screen windows, and removing the bathroom tiles in the tub and seeing what was causing the mold. He said specifically, do not just recaulk it. He ordered them to call an electrician to repair the issues with the outlets. Some had no panels and were not working. Sadly, this very same inspector asked me in my own home not to speak Spanish. This inspector literally turned around in my home to say, English, please. This is so rude and so wrong. I speak 2 languages. At times when I feel uncomfortable, anxious, or nervous, it is what I do. I was speaking Spanish because I could, and it was with one of the maintenance workers. In the end, the only They only replaced some of the broken screens, called the plumber, and again, replaced the gasket on the broken refrigerator. They had plenty of time to do what was needed and failed to do so. This is why I went to the Board of Health of Acton. I have never been provided a copy of an inspection report. I have never been given names or companies or contact information of any of the inspectors. They have never given me a card or identified themselves. Since I moved in, every year after my inspection, my bathroom has been recaulked. Recalking a bathtub every single year is not normal, especially when there are visible signs of mold and clearly issues with water damage around the tub that leaks into the unit below. When I questioned why they needed to keep caulking instead of taking care of the issue, I was told not to interfere with the job of maintenance staff. I have been asking since 2019 for the mold issue in the bathroom to be fixed. I am highly allergic to mold. My son, who is just 8 years old, is having issue with his respiratory system because of the mold and the carpeting. Since April of this year, he has been rushed to the ER 3 times. Each time he has been admitted with respiratory distress due to the environment where we live. I stated this to previous inspectors, including the one recently on June 18th, who agreed with me that the tiles needed to be torn down and the tub needed to be removed so they could fix whatever it is leaking and causing the constant mold growth. Instead, I've been told to clean the tub with Clorox. Sorry. It is mind-blowing how, on top of everything else, now I get told how or what I should use to clean with. I am highly allergic to Clorox. I cannot use it to clean. How I clean my bathroom has nothing to do with why the mold keeps growing. It is an issue that needs to be fixed. It's been ignored and looking for a cheap way out by caulking or insulting the person that lives in the unit by telling them how to clean the mold does not solve the mold issue. Blaming a tenant or her children for water leaks does not solve the problem. This clearly needs to be done correctly. Their poor judgment, lack of ethics, and accusations do not solve the issues in the bathroom. The leak from the toilet, since it wasn't sealed, has caused a new bathroom sink to also rot alongside the bottom. Now, once again, that too needs to be replaced. This entire bathroom needs to be gutted and redone. Putting a Band-Aid on issues that needs full repair and blaming a tenant is unacceptable. I have been asking for 2 kitchen drawers to be fixed. They are still broken. No one has handled it. The other does not open at all. On June 18th, the inspector told the maintenance staff to take care of the issues. The cabinets are stained. They've been painted over with gloss. The magnets that keep them from closing do not work properly. All the heating baseboard covers in this unit are broken. They are falling off constantly. Some give more heat than others. You can literally see that they have been painted over and over with debris on them. Same issue with the window seals. In the kitchen, you can visibly see the laminating floor peeling and coming out. The floor, no matter how much I mop, it is permanently discolored and always looks filthy. The floor is missing pieces. It needs to be replaced. Next to the refrigerator, is a 1 foot by 2 hole in the wall and that has a cover. This cover came off through the hole. I can see the bathtub. The space is full of dust, molds, and a haven of rodents. When I asked the cover to be replaced, they ignored me. And for that fact, I already had put heavy-duty packing tape in them to hold the cover in place. But recently, because of the Board of Health of Acton, they've installed screws to hold the cover in place. The kitchen counter is swollen and elevated from the corners to the end. You can see it lifting. Finally, after complaining, they put in a new one. However, it's doing the same thing. The edge of the counters between the stove is broken. The caulking around the sink is practically gone. Now mold is growing there too. The company that installed the counters left holes in the walls, which allowed disgusting bugs to come out. Once again, I complained, but it was not solved until the Acton Board of Health came. The electrical outlets in the units all need to be updated and replaced. I have mentioned and showed the issues to the staff. I have explained to them that when I plug in something, it spits it back out, or at times it just creates sparks. This happens whether I use both outlets or one. The outlets behind the refrigerator has no panel. It was recently fixed because of the Acton Board of Health. I have videos to show anyone that asks me. The inspector on June 18th and the Acton Board of Health came on September 20th for a brief inspection agreed that these outlets needed to be fixed. An electrician should have been called in. As of 10/7/2021, they brought an electrician. He replaced most of the outlets except the ones in my bedroom. The one in my room will be replaced when the electrician comes back to install a new bathroom fan that was ordered to be cleaned by me. The carpets in this unit are beyond disgusting. They are old, and I cannot vacuum for a total of 3 years. I swept them, but that wasn't enough. I hired professional carpet cleaner. He stated that if he had known the conditions of the carpets in my unit, he wouldn't have accepted the job. He stated that these carpets need and should be replaced. When I asked to be transferred because of the health issues I have from living in a rugged unit, I was ignored. When I asked for the carpets to be replaced with hardwood floors and tiles or anything other than carpets, I was ignored and told no, even though it affects my health and now my son's. When I asked about how many times the carpets has been changed, I was told it is the original carpet. This building was built in 1967. When the Acton Housing Authority brought me to court for non-payment of rent in 2017, I was forced to retract my statement from mentioning the carpet issues in my unit by the Acton Housing Authority director. I agree because I was afraid of eviction. The building loses power on a regular basis. Last time the power went, not even the hallway emergency lights came on. I just want to mention this because I find it important. When I added my boyfriend to the lease in September of 2018, my rent went from $900 to $1,585 just for 1 month, for the month of September of 18. I was also questioned by the assistant director after she received my paperwork to add my boyfriend why he was using his debit card so much in Acton if he lived elsewhere, and if I am sure he wasn't living with me sooner. The audacity of such a question angered me. I felt they were rude and so inappropriate. My fiance works in Acton, so my rent went up from $900 to $1,585 because I added him. Right underneath was a new lease from $1,585. There was a new lease for October 2018 for $1,810. I was so lost. I could not understand how we had such an increase so quickly. I did my recertification right before adding my boyfriend, so none of my information changed. During the recertification, I gave them all his information and paperwork. The conclusion was $1,585. So why 1 month later is it $1,810? I live in a 2-bedroom, 1 unit. In a 1-bathroom unit, a 3-bedroom, 2-bathroom, fully updated unit with hardwood floors in the same building rents for the same amount. These units that unit is beautiful compared to ours. Nothing made sense to me. When I called and I asked the assistant director why, she stated that she just types the numbers in and that the system does the rest. It seemed odd that the system printed 2 leases. Unsure of the legitimacy of her answer and how wrong it seemed, we refused to sign the lease. We paid $1,810 for months in hopes of getting answers. We struggled with our other bills, food, and daily living expenses, all while dealing with the continuous biased treatment of the Acton Housing Authority. If this was all happening at the same time, the tenant below me was harassing us with the support of the Acton Housing Authority. Dealing with all these insane issues left us feeling more and more overwhelmed. It took me until May of 2020 19 to figure out what was happening, thanks to a friend that knew about the breakdown of how rent is calculated. The Acton Housing Authority removed my daycare payment. I was paying my mother $225 a week for the care of my daughter. The rules say you need a third-party letter to provide childcare. A letter from my mother should have been fine, but the Acton Authority had made special rules for me. The sudden increase to $18.10 for rent was because the Acton Housing Authority suddenly and without notice removed my daughter's child care from the rent calculation. After months of accepting my mother's letter, the Acton Housing Authority changed its mind and increased my rent. My mother only agreed to watch my daughter if I was willing to pay her the same amount I used to pay for her daycare. Acton Housing Authority used the same letter right before I added my fiance. They used the same letter when I added my fiance. So why the change in the amount I paid her from 1 month to the next? How do they have the authority to make such special rules just for me? I went into the office on June 13, 2019 to discuss with the Acton Housing Authority Director and the housing attorney all of the issues mentioned above and more. The meeting was horrible. I have never been patronized, insulted, humiliated the way both of these women made me feel. Every time I brought up a concern up or argued as to why they shouldn't accuse me of the things I was shut down. I was told I was wrong and that they were right because of who they were. She insisted I did not know what I was talking about. She said I couldn't pay my mom and it was written all over the lease. It is not. When I told her she was wrong and I could pay anyone I wanted to as long as they didn't live with me, she said that was not her problem. She said if I didn't sign a repayment lease, I would get evicted. I wouldn't be allowed in a shelter. She said that what happens when you live in public housing and get evicted. She said I was wrong to accuse her of being biased towards my family and I just didn't want to pay my rent. I clearly told her she was wrong, and she had and was continuing to treat us with discrimination. And the only person in that office that has never failed us to treat us with human decency was Amanda Eldridge. She looked at me and told me that Amanda was nice and did her job because as a director, she tells Amanda what to do. She said if it weren't for her making Amanda do her job, my children would never get the gifts the community gives during Christmas time. She and the lawyer both told me that I was lucky to be where I was and paying what I was paying because market value for this apartment was $2,325 per month. They told me I couldn't be transferred into a different unit until all the amount owed was paid. I asked for proof of all these things, and she stated in this meeting and never received anything. Instead, I had to sign a repayment lease in the amount of $1906 per month. They also refused to answer me as to why Lance's federal garnishment from his paycheck was non-deductible. As far as I know, and looked into it, if someone is paying for student loans, which is for education, it should be. He is not getting that money back. That's income we did not see. No answer. I want to emphasize that by no means am I looking for pity. I just want justice for my family and I want what has happened to us to be corrected. We should have never experienced such awful acts of bias, discrimination, and harassment. I have always been a hard worker and done my best, so there is no excuse for a group of professionals to behave and treat any average poor person of color like me and my kids the way these people have. I have tried my hardest to fight for justice by going to the Boston Housing Discrimination Office and filing a complaint. Unfortunately, because of my learning disabilities and COVID, I did not submit enough proof, and they closed my case, leaving the Acton Housing Authority to continue being biased towards us. The Acton Housing Authority submitted an affirmation statement to the Boston Discrimination Office. I was appalled at how they lied about us. They said that the tenant below me that used to harass us was moved because of all the leaks we were causing in the unit. The truth is that tenant was moved because she no longer needed a 2-bedroom as her daughter had moved out. The water leak issues have nothing to do with me. They wrote in their affirmation that my family and I were nothing but trouble and constantly disrupting all of my neighbors. I have collected letters from neighbors stating the opposite. They even went on to say that 2 of their employees had Black spouses and children to justify the biased way that they treated me. Seriously, you can have an entire Black family, and that does not stop you from being biased. I am an American-born woman of color and Latina. I am human. We all are. I stopped paying rent thinking I would be helped. Clearly, because of the mess that put me into. I want to pay the correct amount of money owed, not what they say I do because they made special rules for me. Can you imagine these 2 women went as far as bringing up the fact that my daughter's old daycare took me to court for non-payment? Yes, they did, because I took my daughter out of the place because something happened to her there and I could not prove it. So I stopped paying them. Yes, they brought me to court, but I paid them, and I did not think this was any of the Acton Housing Authority's business. This was a very delicate issue for me that involved a lot of tears and stress. How dare they? All while I still had to pay my mom for gas, food, etc. I did not and do not deserve to have ever been treated the way they treated me and my children. My fiance, Lance, is a white American and a veteran. He clearly noticed how I was treated differently than him in both of the meetings we had in person with the Acton Housing Authority. The condo association trustee, named Victoria, has openly discriminated against me and my family. Every time I was at risk to be evicted by the Acton Housing Authority, they would tell Victoria, and the information would then be shared with other Acton Housing Authority tenants. If the things that I have mentioned are not a form of being treated poorly with bias, discriminating ways, and negligence, then I don't know what else can be. It is absolutely without a doubt that we need a system that isn't biased and unfair. I want justice. I want peace. I do not want to see my baby struggling to breathe. I do not want my 15-year-old to continue sharing a room with a 6-year-old. Our request to move has been denied. We were told in May of 2018 that because my oldest daughter turned 13, we would be moved because of the age difference. Since then, I have had another child and my fiance move in. I want change, not just for me, but for all that might live here in the future. That they never have to encounter such hatred, bias, and injustice. I want no one to be fired, but I do want to see people take accountability for their actions. I have done my part to do the best version of myself for me, for my children, and the ones that I love, and all that I come in contact with. I had a horrible surgery gone wrong in July of 2019, leaving me out of work for almost 12 weeks and causing me to have a hematoma and an abscess. It required 2 hospital stays at 2 different hospitals because of the negligence of one doctor. That doctor dismissed my pain after surgery and accused me of seeking opiates. I am allergic to opiates. I almost died, and I was readmitted to a hospital 1 week later. That experience alone left my children and I traumatized. I had to wear a drain for 26 days. I have been treated badly so many times in my life, but I have never treated anyone badly because of what has happened to me. So what is the excuse for the way the Acton Housing Authority has treated us the way they have? There is none. There is no excuse for a group of people who are professionals working to help low-income people to behave so poorly. It is unfathomable. It is unacceptable. I truly pray and hope that you all can see what has happened to my family and I will never stop until every one of them is held accountable. I will walk to the governor's office, even to the White House, to make my story known. We need change to our broken system. Enough is enough. You cannot keep accusing people of things that they don't do because you do not want to fix the things that need to be fixed. It is unacceptable, unacceptable. And I want to make it known that since the Acton Board of Health went, my refrigerator has been replaced. Like I said, some of the outlets have been replaced. And I just got an email from Mrs. Cronin today letting me know, without even asking me if it's okay, that someone's coming to retile our bathroom for 2 days, which is the 20th, my daughter's 16th birthday, and that Thursday. What bathroom am I supposed to use in those 2 days? Where am I supposed to go? Thank you for listening to me.
Thank you. Ms. Coos, could you stay just a minute up here? Thank you so much for taking the time to prepare all that and letting us know. And I'm really sorry for your experience, and we'll look into that. I have your email address. Would you be willing to leave your phone number with the town manager before you leave the auditorium, and somebody will get back to you. Thank you.
Can I give you a hug? I want to give her a hug too. I'll hug her later.
Please. Can you just turn on the microphone? There you go. Thank you.
I haven't had as much time to prepare, but I'm here to speak up for Madeline. I also live at 2 Townhouse Lane in the same building as Madeline Cruz, and I moved here about a year ago. I learned Madeline's story bit by bit, mostly by observation and asking questions. The first issue I learned about was the refrigerator. It was hard not to notice a neighbor that was constantly throwing away as much food as she was throwing out. And for a family that's low income, that's a ridiculous amount of money to have to spend on food. So I asked her about it, and she told me that her refrigerator has been broken for 4 years. But Acton Housing insisted that it worked. So a little bit of my background, I'm an Air Force veteran. I was an aircraft mechanic, and I also have 2 engineering degrees. I didn't need any of this to see that a refrigerator was broken. It was broken, right? So half the food would either freeze, some of it was room temperature, just like a clearly, very obviously broken refrigerator. So I thought that this was some sort of error, on the behalf of housing. Maybe nobody looked at it or somebody didn't know. But during my time there, I see maintenance go into her apartment and come out after she's shown them this clearly broken refrigerator, and they tell her that it is not broken. I find this absolutely amazing, that this could happen in Acton. It makes me embarrassed, honestly, like for the community, that we could gaslight somebody that way. The toilet. And so even like after that, I was still thinking like there was some mistake somewhere, like some error. But after the toilet, it just, made me realize that there was seriously something going on in Acton housing. So like I've been in her bathroom and the toilet's just completely unsealed. Like it wobbles on the floor. It's not attached. So it's just sitting there, right? So of course it leaks. And the other thing is in our building, it was built in the 60s. It's got constant plumbing problems. I've been here for a year, and we've gotten about 3 letters from the water company saying that there's some leak somewhere in the building. that they want us to figure out where it is. Acton Housing is currently investigating a leak in a unit that's not that far from Madeline's, where they had to put a hole in the wall and try to find out where it's coming from. The apartment above mine had a leak behind the shower that, there was water coming from somewhere. They had to open up the wall, go behind the shower, and figure out where the leak was coming from. So and this is just in 1 year. And in this time period, knowing that there have been 3 other leaks in other units in the building, there has been no person ever blamed for their leaks. That's never happened. The only person I've ever heard of that happening to is Madeline. She's the only person that has been blamed for the leaks in her unit, like knowing that the building has plumbing issues, knowing that her toilet is broken, knowing like there is physically no seal on her floor. Like the water has leaked enough from it not being sealed that it's eaten away at the hardware on the toilet so that like it can't be attached properly anymore. So it makes me very angry. And then the cost of the unit. So the apartment that she was talking about was mine. So my apartment, it's a 3-bedroom, 2-bathroom. It's nice, like it's all right. It's got, wood floors. And I think when I moved in there last year, I was paying a little over $1,900 a month. That is the same thing that she was paying for her 1960. Like it's got cabinets that are broken. The floor, like the carpet is seriously carpet from 1960. The issues in the bathroom, nobody would rent that unit at all for like anywhere near, I can't say the number, but it is not $1,900. I don't know what needs to happen, but somebody needs to actually look in the apartments and make a decision as to what the genuine market value is worth, because that's not like what we should be charging people for affordable housing. If we're gonna make it affordable, it should be affordable. It shouldn't be some crazy number that they come up with based off of some apartment that has marble countertops and, hardwood floor and something nice. As I've gotten closer to the situation, Madeline has shared some emails and messages with me. They constantly make appointments at times, like she was talking about. They don't ask her, like, hey, can we come by on Thursday? Like, is that okay with you? No, they just simply inform her of when they are coming, and they tell her that we will let ourselves in if you are not there. One time this happened not that long ago. As she said, her son's having breathing issues. At one point, she had been in the hospital for 2 days with the baby. For his breathing problems. This is what precipitated her call to the health department. Acton Housing heard about the health department call. So this is after, I think, 5 years of not having a working refrigerator. They suddenly decided that day they wished to give her a new refrigerator right before the health inspection. So Madeline had to give me a letter to give to them because they're supposed to at least give her 48 hours notice before coming to her apartment, which they did not do. Basically, they said, we're coming to your house right now. If you're not there, we're letting ourselves in, and we're making these changes that we wish to make. So Madeline gave me a letter to give to them because clearly she could not be there. I sat outside of her apartment. They came about an hour and a half late to make these changes to her unit, provided them the letter, and they did leave. But had I not been there, they would have just been in her house making whatever changes they wished to make without any, conversation with the tenant and how that would impact her. Additionally, they would have tried to recall her tub, not dealing with the leak that obviously exists behind her bathroom that is causing the mold, which is, what has happened in a few other units in the building, which is not only bad for her, it's bad for the entire building. The fact there's been a leak back there for about 3 years that nobody's done anything about. But I don't have a snappy closing or anything. I just want to say, please fix this. Thank you.
Thank you for taking the time to support Ms. Cruz.
I actually had something I wanted.
Who are you, please?
Oh, I'm sorry about that. I'm David Fair at 490 Great Road, across from Junior's Pizza, which I love, the Hawaiian, small Hawaiian. But anyway, sorry. I had something I wanted to talk about, but I don't even care about that anymore. We need to listen to Madeline. I mean, this is, we can do much better than that, and I think this is the answer. This is what we got to do. We got to listen, and I would urge everyone, if you're just signing on right now, rewind back and please listen to what the citizen said of Acton. It's important. I don't care what I was going to say. I just want to listen to Madeline's. Please, thank you.
Thank you.
I don't know if I shut that off. No.
Yes, please, thank you. Thank you, everyone. Yes, we'll go to the public hearings and come back to the items, the other items in the beginning of the agenda. The first public hearing is the Acton Select Board will hold a public hearing on October 18th, 2021 at 7:40 p.m. in the Francis Faulkner Hearing Room, 204 at the Town Hall, 472 Main Street, Acton, and virtually actonma.gov/meeting/BOS on the application of 145 Great Road LLC for a use special permit under the zoning bylaw 3.5.15 and 10.3 at 145 Great Road, map F4, parcel 37. Application materials and how to participate remotely are available online and at Acton Town Hall at doc.actonma.gov/view/collection-13996/collection-14,000. Mr. Manager.
Thank you. We have the applicant here with us to present their application.
Hi, everybody.
Hello.
Can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Good evening. I am Alicia Bisconi from Key Point Partners. We represent 145 Great Road LLC, which is also known as Brookside, located on Great Road in Acton. I am with our property manager, Chris Serrano from Key Point Partners, and our tenant, who will be presenting after me, Rob represents our new tenant at X Golf. What I can do for everybody here, if it's helpful, I can just kind of walk you through a little bit of the history of Brookside. So Brookside is located on Great Road, and it's about 75,000 square feet. It's a retail center anchored by Trader Joe's. A few years ago, with the neighbors in Acton, we were able to rezone the property into limited business use. So the property has been and was designed for a retail center. Right now we have a mixture of Trader Joe's, Staples, and other smaller retailers. So the goal when it was rezoned is to allow the center to re-tenant itself to meet the market. And then, as we all know, as we rolled through and are now reemerging through COVID, what we found that property experienced the impact of the COVID effect on the retail side, in that it lost two of its larger dry goods tenants, and that being Pier 1 and Joseph A. Banks. So what we noticed and what happened in COVID for the properties that we manage on the retail side is that not only as we're reemerging, the pool of retailers now have changed. So in emerging through post-COVID world, the tenants that are reemerging are those that are family-oriented, those that have some sort of a experiential focus to it. And on the other side, the tenants that are now coming into retail centers is more family-friendly food as well. The property was lucky enough to have that type of a tenant, which is in harmony with the Acton master plan, but also in harmony with the neighborhood, and that's X Golf. I'll let Rob introduce his company for you, but we're here today because even though we feel that X Golf will support the neighborhood and will also support, is very family friendly, it conflicts with the commercial recreational bylaw in your zone. But what we believe is that not only was the property designed well to handle such a tenant, we believe that it is in harmony with your master plan, but also it's the best and highest use of the retailers today in this post-COVID world, if that makes any sense. So before we came in front of you, what we did was we met with the town departments, and that we wanted to make sure that A, the use fit, but B, that we were in compliance. So we are, we meet the parking requirements. We met with the Board of Health, explained the use. We meet with the septic requirements. So everyone in the town has helped us shepherd along this use. So that we're here just asking for approval for their special use, just on the commercial recreational side. So I'll pause for a moment if you have any questions, and if not, I'll turn it over to Rob to talk about X-Golf itself.
Let's complete your presentations and then we'll have questions at the end.
Perfect.
Okay, so my name is Rob Granahan. I own X-Golf in Wayland, and I'm really excited about the opportunity of opening one in Acton. I think it's an awesome location, and I think this community fits perfectly with what we're trying to do. So I do have some slides. I don't want to take up too much time, but the slides do kind of help you know, show some pictures so you can get a sense for what it's actually like. So let me see if I can do this.
Yeah, please go ahead.
Share. Okay. So here's background about me. I live in Concord. I grew up in Concord, spent a lot of time in Acton, you know, back when they had Pizza Hut and, you know, some of the other things. And I was a member at Quail Ridge, and my kids have spent so many hours at Teamworks. So anyway, love Acton, have been here a lot. Anyway, so I grew up here, went to school here. Got in the Navy, was a pilot in the Navy for a few years, and then got out, got my MBA, started working in investment management. I wanted to do something in golf. So after 22 years, I said, you know, let's find something that makes sense. X-Golf kind of has turned into that thing. I spoke with them for a few years, and we decided to open the first one in Massachusetts, in Wayland. And despite the pretty bad timing with COVID, it's been really fun, and customers have been really very, very supportive. So I think, like I said, I think it could be the same in Acton. So X-Golf is probably the only national indoor entertainment simulator business for golf. And it's early stage, so they're only, you'll see the map in a second, but they're pretty small. So it's growing fast, but you know, it started as them creating the best simulators you could have. And they're extremely accurate. And then, you know, with our focus as the operator, to provide a family-friendly indoor golf experience, focusing on entertainment with food and beverage offerings. So we try to make the experience as best as it can be. Here's the map of what X-Golf is. There's, you know, probably doubling every year. So even though it's small. So this is some pictures of the outside of Wayland. It's, you know, it's a clean look. The signs are pretty, you know, they're noticeable, but they're fairly subtle. So they're not kind of in your face. And then the indoor, so basically it's a big open box with simulators that are pretty big. So these simulators are 15 feet wide by 25 feet deep. And I guess the lower left probably shows the best view of that. But they're big enough so you can swing a club and have some people sitting in at the chairs or at the couch. And the way it works is you bring your clubs or you rent clubs with us, and then you actually hit a golf ball with your club into the screen, and then pretty much instantaneously the computations are made and the ball shows up on the screen flying through the air in Pebble Beach or Hazeltine or whatever course you happen to be playing. And it's really fun. So it's very addictive. People usually play the courses, but you can also take a lesson or do a clinic or just practice. We have a virtual driving range that you can practice, and they're rented by the hour. So it's, you know, not by the person. So you can go by yourself or with other people too. Just some pictures. Steve's the guy in the center. He's our pro. He's very busy teaching lessons, and he does all the clinics too. And the kids come in for the clinics. It's really fun because kids love to be able to hit golf balls on greens, and they can't do that much out in the green grass world. So it's really fun. Golf leagues and tournaments are really, really popular. And as part of what X Golf does, it becomes a big part of it. These are weekly leagues. It can be husband, wife, or friends from work, or buddies, or just whoever. You make a team and you play on a weekly league, and it's, you know, fairly competitive, and people try to get better and they try to win, and there's playoffs in the end and trophies. So these guys are all winners. They all have trophies. And like I said, the you know, husband, wife, or just friends from work, everyone can have fun doing it. Which kind of leads to this slide, which shows, I was really surprised at how broad the appeal it has been. But that, you know, the left slide shows the, you know, kind of extended family with the grandparents and the grandkids and everyone in between playing in the same bay, which you really can't do anywhere else. You can't even do that in green grass golf. So it's really nice. You have the couples in the middle. It's a fun outing, and then the father son on the right just shows you can have fun no matter what, even if your child is just learning. These are our two busiest events, just to show some scale for how we're not really that crowded. It's a big footprint, and yet since the bays take up most of the space, and you usually have about 4 people per bay, it doesn't get that crowded. This surprise party obviously was pre-COVID. It was our biggest event we've had, and the corporate event was 40 people during the day. That was really successful. I think that was probably a few weeks before COVID shut us down, but it was a fun event nonetheless. But yeah, so they come in. There's a lot of room to spread out, and you can still talk to each other. This is a sample menu of the food. So it is food that you can eat while you're playing golf. You can think about it that way. So pigs in a blanket, mozzarella sticks, and chicken tenders. You know, you're not coming to X Golf for a steak or something fancy. You're just coming to eat something while you're playing golf, and it's actually good food. I've been impressed. The pizza is probably my favorite thing, but it's I'd stack it up against some of the other folks out there. But it is simply made. It is heated in a high-speed oven. It only takes a couple minutes for each item, so it's very easy for the staff to do it and bring it out pretty quickly. What else? Here's the proposed layout. You can see the bays are pretty obvious where all the red electronics are. So 8 bays for simulators, and then in the middle is the check-in area with the bar, and then the prep and storage behind it, and the bathrooms behind that. It's pretty wide open, so you have a lot of room to kind of put your clubs down and settle down. And I think it's really nice that way. And the staff is, can see everything that's going on too, so that makes it nice. Our proposed hours these are our hours in Wayland, so 9 to 10, 9 to 11 on Saturday and Sunday, and then 9 to 9 on Sunday. But our busiest times are weeknights for leagues. So our leagues just started this week actually in Wayland. So we're pretty booked up at night, but weekends again for open play. Now this is during the season, obviously, so that's our busiest time too. And so weekday mornings and afternoons, it's not as busy, and so we try to do lessons and clinics during that time. And it sounds like that fits well with some of the other tenants at Brookside, since our busier times are when they're either closed or getting ready to close. And then seasonality, you can probably guess, summer with the warm weather, if you can play outside, you're probably not going to play inside. And then winters, our busiest time. And then fall and spring, it depends on the weather. These are comments from the neighbors in Wayland Town Center. Jose is the GM at the Local, which is a restaurant right there. He's a supporter of ours. And then Nancy's, I think, our closest neighbor, and she's been really supportive and helpful. And then Sarkeesian is the Wayland Town planner. He's been very helpful during COVID with, helping us figure out how to, deal with all the restrictions and figure out ways to make things work. So he's been great. And then last page is our Google reviews. So just leave it at that. But again, very excited about the opportunity.
Thank you. Are there other parts to the presentation, or?
This is all I have.
Okay.
Correct.
Really? Was that all that you had as well, Alicia?
Correct. Yep, correct.
Any questions from members of the board? Jim?
This is a question for the capacity there, and how much of the remaining capacity the X-Golf has taken up.
On the good note, we did calculations with the Board of Health. The property is actually on a FAST system. And the property was originally designed to have a restaurant. It was supposed to be in the corner, this quadrant, the right-hand side. But then it's probably a decade ago by now, there was the original, I want to call it organic kitchen that was on the far left-hand side. So as a result, we actually had a wet use capacity, so that we ran all the calculations, but because it was originally designed in, we still have plenty of capacity for Rob's use, but also future use. There's probably upwards to, I think it's the mid hundreds gallon per day that we have still in capacity, above and beyond the forecasted retail use for any of the existing, and that includes our newest tenant, who will be Boston Market, and X Golf will be subdividing the existing Pier 1 box, if that makes any sense.
Thanks. No more questions.
Perfect.
Anyone else? Grant?
You just answered my question. I was just curious about the relation to Boston Market. It's going to be a separate entity. It's a separate entity. It's not inside X Golf.
Correct. It's adjacent to. So the original Pier 1 box, in round numbers, was about 11,000 square feet. So X Golf will take approximately 7,800 square feet, and the remaining will be the Boston Market. So it's not the Boston Market of old. It's the Boston Market of new, which is more of that quick serve, less than 17 seats Boston Market. It's the newer version.
Excellent. And you don't need a cart, a golf cart, which is cool.
Imogen, please.
Thank you. So a few questions. One, this was touched upon slightly with discussion on the bays, but any COVID considerations that would be good to know about and kind of changes that have been made in light of that. The second question was, as people know, restaurants are big users of water. And so I was wondering if there was a water study done. And then the third question is a clarification question. So in the special permit, you have, it was kind of hard to read, so I was wondering if you could clarify the numbers that you have for total parking spaces provided on site, total parking spaces dedicated to proposed use that exist, and total parking spaces dedicated to proposed use on page 20.
Sure. Rob, do you want to handle the first two questions and then I'll go in on the parking calc?
Sure. So for COVID, so we as you can imagine, we did a lot of everything. So we came out with so in Wayland I'm talking about. So what we have done since the beginning is we're going to adhere to whatever the CDC and the governor and the town say we should do. And so from the beginning, that's kind of what we followed. But then we tried to do more than that. So when masks were required, we required masks. When we had when we put partitions between the bays. We put basically partitions all around the bays. We added some air purifiers. We still actually have the temperature scanning station, which is actually pretty cool. People just use it anyway, just because you can get a quick temperature. I use it every day, but anyway, that's right when you walk in. But we did a lot, and we had to deal with a lot. And frankly, I really credit my team for having to change course every time something new came out, and our capacity went to 25%, and things were tough. And mandating masks, and these 19, 20-year-old kids are telling 68-year-old people that you got to put your mask on, and they did it, and they did such a great job. So I'm really proud of them. But so yes, so to answer your question, basically we do whatever we can do, and then we try to do a little bit more to make people feel comfortable, because we know that's the only way they're coming. I know there are people that aren't coming in because they said, I'm not going to come in until after this is over, and that's fine. But for those that still feel comfortable coming in, we want to make them feel comfortable coming in and want to come back. So we really try hard to do that. The next question was the water study. I didn't do a water study. We have had numbers in Wayland. They were asking about that, but so I found out what the folks in Michigan did. There's a bunch of ex-golfs in Michigan, and they gave us some numbers, but I honestly don't remember what they were. They weren't that much. We really don't use that much water. For us, it's mostly just bathroom use. There is some cleaning that's done, but it's, like I said, with the food, it's not a lot of food. Just in percentage basis, food is less than 5% of our revenues, so it's really not that much. And most of it is people come in and play golf. So we don't use a lot of water.
So I'm just bringing up my chart. On the parking side, the chart that I have in front of me, we estimate that we have approximately 330 spaces in the plaza. Doing the calculation based on three spaces per 1,000, that would equate to about 228 spaces required, so that we would have a surplus of 102 spaces at the center.
Anyone else? Dee? I don't have any questions. Are there any questions from members of the public? Or comments? Okay, I don't see any. Any objection to closing the hearing? Will we close the hearing? Closing has been moved. Is there a second? I'll second. All in favor of closing the hearing, say aye. 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 Any opposed? Okay, the hearing's closed. Just so everyone knows here what we're voting on. Well, first of all, the reason for the vote is that this limited business allows specific uses. Turns out that the Boston market is allowed by right, but a sporting commercial thing is not allowed by right. And that's why they need a special use permit. And
approval of the special use permit is based on whether it's consistent with the master plan, is in harmony with the purpose and intent of this zoning bylaw, will not be detrimental or injurious to the neighborhood in which it exists, is appropriate for the site, and complies with all applicable requirements of the bylaw. So that's what what our approval means. There's a draft decision in the packet. And if we're in agreement with that, we could move to approve the special use permit as drafted.
So moved.
Is there a second?
A second.
All in favor of approving the special use permit as drafted, say aye.
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 Any opposed? Okay, it's approved.
Thank you, everybody. We appreciate it.
We'll see you guys in just a few minutes again, I think, for a couple more hearings. But for now, we have to move on to our next hearing. Under MGL 140, Section 58, the Acton Select Board will hold a public hearing in room 204 at Acton Town Hall, 472 Main Street, on October 18, 2021 at 8 p.m. on the application of Garage Hail LLC for a Class 2 auto dealer's license at 465 Great Road, Acton, MA 01720. From a computer, enter the link actonma.gov/meeting/BOS, or from a telephone, dial 646-876-9923 and enter in the webinar ID 503-918-785. Telephone users may dial 9 to request to speak after joining the meeting. Computer and app users may use the raised hand feature to speak. So is there a presentation here, John, from Garage Hail?
I believe so, yes. Mr. Patel.
Mr. Patel.
Mr. Patel.
Mr. Patel, you're
muted.
Testing. Hello.
You're good.
Oh, hello, everybody. No, I actually don't have a presentation currently. We're building a website online, and we're just kind of getting it off the ground, but we want to be able to start doing electronic sales of cars and just make it just an easier process than having to go to a dealership and go through the whole hassle. Just with COVID nowadays and a huge car shortage, it's kind of been a very difficult experience for a lot of people. So assembling a team and doing everything digitally, and this is kind of the beginning of it all.
Okay, so this is all used cars, right, for a Class 2 license?
Correct.
And will you be showing people cars on site? Do they, or is it completely done online?
Completely online.
Okay, and the delivery of cars, how is that handled?
There's a service, there's like several services that do that.
Okay. And so that no one comes to the site to pick up their car?
No, but I mean, we can, I guess, make that available. I have storage facilities that I'm looking at securing, possibly if, you know, we need to store cars. But for the most part, you know, these type of peer-to-peer transactions are very easy to do online, using DocuSign, and all types of vendors, lenders, everything's digital now. So I think we're going to be able to do everything like very little overhead, and that's essentially the goal. We want to make it on an app, you know, and just like Vroom, kind of a competitor to Vroom. Have you guys heard of Carvana? Has physical retail presence, but you know, there's a company like Vroom that just went public, and they're completely digital. So competitors like that, Shift. There's really not much of a market space here yet in the New England area. So I think we can really have a big shot at doing something like that. My family already owns a convenience store on Great Road, and so we're there a lot, all the time. And yeah, so this is still the beginning of it all. So I didn't know what to expect, and I didn't have any presentation prepared. But you know, if that is something that anybody would like to see.
You don't need any, have to have a presentation. I was just giving you the opportunity if you had something. I just have two more quick questions, and I'll ask the other members of the board. Will you be storing any cars at this site?
No. I might take them there to photograph, though.
Okay, that's fine. Yeah, and you won't be, there's no auto repair associated with this site?
No, but I've got, you know, network of lots of different shops that are prepared to help, you know, any type of onboarding of inventory. So yeah.
Okay, any quick questions from other members of the board? Brandon, do you have a question?
Well, I was also going to ask if cars were going to be stored, so that was my question, and it was answered.
Anyone else? Jim.
So the business address is Acton Convenience as well. Is that the store that?
Yeah. So I just assumed, you know what, while I'm running the store, I could just use the office in the back and do all my website administrative work there, and again, like I said, leave all my overhead very low and work remotely, as pretty much we've all been doing for a large part. A lot of this was born out of kind of just trying to predict the future of where this is going, being in retail, you know, and seeing the shift in traffic coming and going. You know, it's kind of almost been like a force of just searching for something that would be able to generate business and fill in the gaps. You know what I mean? But it's becoming something a lot bigger, and I'm excited about it.
Yeah, well, so am I, hearing about it. Great business model. I wish you great success.
Thank you so much. It will be.
I'll open up it to the public for any comments or questions. If you're online, please raise your electronic hand.
I have a quick question.
Oh, Imogen, please, I'm sorry.
No worries. This is just a quick question, but it says here that you don't have any employees working under you, so right now you're just solo?
Correct.
Okay, got you. And the second question, which is more of a curiosity question, but in terms of the cars that you sell, have you thought about looking at it through the lens of sustainability, and are you trying to promote EVs and things like that?
Actually, the first car is a Tesla Model 3. And so, yeah, that I'm starting with that one today, and they're very limited. So that's the other thing, is it's becoming rather niche. And they're the most popular anyways. And I feel the best and most proudest and most confident in them. So yeah, great question. And thank you for that, because that's That's actually a big part of it all. Unfortunately, we couldn't just do exclusively that, just because there's just not enough inventory of Teslas to make the business sustainable and solvent, but it's definitely our priority.
Got you. Good to hear. Thank you.
Thank you.
I see one hand from a member of the public. Matt, could you allow that person to speak?
On user 1, you may speak.
Hi, this is Tara from West Acton. I just have a couple of questions.
Sure.
Go ahead.
And so so there'll be some value that will be created, which is great. Sounds like fun. And maybe some activity, but of course there are costs to the town whenever there's more activity. And so we've got to decide whether this is a community value or, just a private profit value. And so I'm wondering if, like a restaurant, there's a tax on restaurant and meals, which comes back to cover the costs of more heavier business activity. And so I'm wondering whether the online revenues would play a role in the appraisal or assess value of the property. Thank you. I'll take my answer offline.
Major, do you think that changes the appraised value?
That's not something that I could answer at this time. No, not sure.
Okay, any other questions or comments? Okay, seeing none, I'll take a motion to close the hearing. So moved. It's been moved. Is there a second?
Thank you very much, everybody, for everybody's time.
Thank you. So it's been made and seconded to close the hearing. All in favor of closing the hearing, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? The hearing is closed. And now I'll take a motion to approve a Class 2 auto dealer's license for garage sale at 465 Great Road in Acton. So moved. Is there a second? Please.
Seconded.
Okay, it's been made and seconded. All in favor of approving the Class 2 license, say aye.
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 Any opposed? It's approved. Thank you very much. Okay, we'll move on to our next hearing. Notice is hereby given under Chapter 138, Section 12 of the General Laws that the Select Board will hold a hearing in the Francis Faulkner Hearing Room 204 in the Acton Town Hall, 472 Main Street, Acton, and virtually at actonma.gov /meeting/BOS or from a telephone dial 646-876-9923 and enter webinar ID 503-918-785. Telephone users may dial *9 to request to speak. Computer and app users may use the raised hand speaker to request to speak. On October 18th, 2021 at 8:10 p.m. on the application of RFG Golf LLC for an all-alcoholic beverage license located at 145 Great Road, Acton, Ma. The application is on file in the Select Board office and may be viewed during normal working hours. Okay, Mr. Manager. Good evening.
Yes, we have.
My name's Elizabeth Flashway, and I am here on behalf of RFG Golf LLC, doing business as X Golf in Acton. I have a couple of procedural questions for the board. The first is, would the board be willing to adopt the facts as recited by Mr. Granahan in the earlier special permit hearing, or would you like a recitation of the facts?
I think we can just use the facts as from the earlier hearing. Any objection to that from members of the board? Okay, good.
Thank you. And my next question is, following this hearing is a hearing on the common victual license application. The facts will be the same. Would you like me to address that separately or combined with this hearing?
You can do it combined, and then we'll do separate comments from the public.
Okay, thank you. So just to hit on a couple of points, this is an application for an all alcohol annual on-premise license at 145 Great Road in Acton. And as Mr. Granahan recited to you, he's proposing an indoor golf training facility that's going to be very family friendly. He's going to offer instruction, club fittings, leagues, and tournaments. And incidental to the golf training purpose is a food and beverage service. Included in the application, you'll see a menu for X Golf in Wayland, which will be the same menu in Acton. And I can just read quickly for you, but the menu will be relatively simple, but my understanding it's a very high quality bar food. The breakfast menu includes a breakfast sandwich, hash browns. They have appetizers and sweet treats of an ice cream sandwich, hot dogs, chips and salsa, a charcuterie board, soft baked pretzel, cheese quesadilla, pigs in a blanket, mozzarella sticks, chicken tenders, chicken wings, and pizza. In addition to that, they'll be offering beverages, and our request is that the board approve an application for all alcoholic beverages to be served when customers come in to play a round of golf. The proposed hours of operation, I believe Rob recited to you earlier, are 9 a.m. to 10 p.m. Monday through Thursday. On Friday and Saturday, an additional hour, so 9 a.m. to 11 p.m. And then on Sunday from 9 a.m. to 9 p.m. The seating capacity is to be determined, but we are seeking a maximum seating capacity of 57 and a maximum occupancy of 60. Rob is the proposed manager of record. He's the manager of record at the Wayland location. He's a U.S. citizen and is TIP certified. He has been the manager of record in Wayland since its opening 2 years ago, and that location has not had any violations. So Rob is familiar with the ABC's these regulations, and we prepared a written policy for his employees with regard to the sale and service of alcohol, and you have that in the application packet. We believe that the X Golf location here in Acton would nicely accommodate this service. The nearest Section 12 licenses here are the Atlantic Sea Grill at 77 Great Road, which has had a license since 2014, and Rapscallion at 5 Strawberry Hill Road, and that was issued in 2015. Rob showed you some of the comments he's received from the Wayland location, but the Wayland location has received rave reviews. And you can see from those comments that the neighbors feel as though there's a great partnership between the X Golf and their neighboring retail businesses. They send each other to each other's premises, and so there's a nice relationship, and it builds a nice sense of community and business in the area. Another comment from another neighbor was that Rob is a dedicated manager and entrepreneur. It's a family-friendly crowd with children, parents, couples, and small groups. And then again, the Wayland town planner said that the business was literally a game changer in bringing more folks to the town. All very positive. Another factor to consider is traffic. We don't believe there will be any increase to traffic. X Golf's busiest hours are after 6 p.m. on weeknights, and then also on Saturday afternoons, which we feel is compatible with the other retailers in this shopping plaza. And that there's a parking lot in front of the plaza, which will accommodate all of the X Golf patrons. Noise is another factor to consider, and we see no evidence that the granting of a common victualler or all alcoholic license for the establishment would increase the level of noise. Music will be played at or about conversation level, And deliveries occur about once a week, mostly between the hours of 10 a.m. and 2 p.m. This is a modest size. The square footage is 7,244 square feet to accommodate the golf simulators, but in actuality, the capacity is much less, with about 60 people or less. And the sort of operation that carries the license and the reputation of the applicant, as stated previously, Rob's other location in Wayland has a stellar reputation. It's been open for 2 years and has had no problems whatsoever, with glowing reviews. And Rob has no criminal background. And in terms of notice to abutters, there were no schools, churches, or hospitals within 500 feet of the premises. And so in summary, we ask that the board determine that a liquor license at this location is appropriate, as well as a common victualler license at this location. And we respectfully ask the select board to grant an annual all alcoholic beverages section 12 license, as well as a CV license to RFG Golf. Thank you.
Thank you. Very thorough. I just have one quick question. Maybe I should have asked this during the last presentation. I think the access is being improved from the sidewalk out front. Is that correct? Maybe that's part of the plaza's work.
Rob, can you answer that question?
Are they improving the walkway that goes from that corner of the building to the sidewalk?
So I think you'd have to check with Alicia. She did mention this last time we spoke, that there was, I think, a petition to add stairs in where that corner, is that the corner you're talking about, where Boston Market will be?
Yes,
that's what you're talking about?
There's stairs and then an accessible walkway, I think. I just saw the drawings for that, and I just wanted to make sure that those plans were in place for access to Excel. But
so our main entrance will be the Pier 1 main entrance, so that won't change. So I think they're adding a new door for and I shouldn't speak because I don't know, but I think that's the plan, is to add a new door for Boston Market. But we'll keep the same main entrance that Pier 1 had.
Okay, thank you. Alicia, do you know the answer about the walkway from the street?
Yes, absolutely. So we, because we're subdividing, there's a grade change for the elevation of the 2 new doors. We had replaced the sidewalk from the corner of Trader Joe's through to around to the front of Staples. We will take, at that break, we'll now replace the sidewalk from that corner down to what would be the end cap, the end wall. But because we are changing the grade, we then are going to be modifying that corner to then modify the access down to 119 and then fully replace that entire sidewalk.
Great, thank you. I just wanted to fully understand that. Thank you.
Yep.
Any questions? Other members of the board? Dean, please.
Yeah, no questions. It's a great presentation. I'm really excited with X Golf and this related use. Not only because it's nice to welcome some new businesses in town, but the possibility that we can start drawing some more clientele into the plaza and all along Route 2A. So I think it's a great move. I'm very much in favor of this.
Yeah, Jim.
Maybe this is a question for the manager. I'm wondering what our townwide full liquor license situation is.
That's something that Lisa Tommel tracks very closely, and she's telling me that we have more than enough to cover this and at least a handful of other businesses, if you want to tell your friends to come to Acton.
Okay, thank you. I'll take that as a message to consider getting into the liquor business. One question I had is, maybe this is a combination of a food question and the X Golf, which is, okay, so I show up to X Golf, I'm in a wheelchair, And what's my experience going to be? Like, can I get around everywhere? Is there a way for me to use the golf clubs and so on?
So there is, yes. The one piece that we would need to make sure we have is a ramp to get up onto the stage. So I don't know if you remember the picture, but the stage is about, I don't know, 8 inches off the ground where you hit the balls compared to the floor. And so I've spoken with other X-Golfs that have this, and they have a ramp that allows people up. Other than that, there's seating, there's access. We plan on making the doors automatic. We actually did that in Wayland as well. That was part of the COVID, didn't want people touching things. And so we made the doors automatic. We'll probably be doing the same thing in Acton if we can. And yeah, it's one level. So there's no change to the grade. The bathrooms obviously are up to code too. So you should be able to do that.
Thanks so much.
Other questions?
Thank you. And Jim, I really liked that question. And it's good to know that accessibility has been taken as a priority. My question is one inspired by public health. So based on the menu, I was wondering if there was any nutrient information that would be provided to people who come in, and also how are food allergies handled?
Food allergies are on the bottom of the menu. It says, please inform the server if anybody has an allergy, and we handle that. The other question on nutrition, we haven't gotten into that, to be perfectly honest. I probably should do some research on that and allow that to be posted too. But I'd have to learn more about what we should post. So something for us to think about.
Yeah, that would be great to look into. Thank you.
I'll open it up now to members of the public if they have any questions. Leo, please go ahead.
Leo Fox from 18 Wright Terrace. Question. If I'm traveling around town with my wife, she says, I need paper, I need ink, and I want to shop at Trader Joe's. And I'm with her without playing golf. Can I walk in, have a beer and a snack?
Mr. Granahan?
Yes. So we expected that to be a bigger part of the business in Wayland than it has turned out to be. So in Wayland, we have a small bar, and it is really not used that much. So, but yes, you can do that. You can walk in, sit down and have a drink or have, food or whatever. But most people come because they want to play golf. There are a lot of places to go and have a drink or have food, but I think the uniqueness of X-Golf is that you can play golf. So I think that's what most people do.
Thank you. I wouldn't use it that much either. It's just I'm not much of a shopper. And I get bored and I usually sit in my car and read my Kindle. So I just want to know if there's another option for me. Thank you.
You can play golf. You can play golf.
Thank you. This is Alyssa. I'm used to Zoom.
And you can't see me, but you can see me now. So I'm Alyssa Nickel from South Acton, School Street. I'm fully in support of X-Golf. My husband is a golfer. I was just stopped short by the comment that this business is it's not within 500 feet of any churches, and I know that the Acton Concord Chabad is across the street from the shopping plaza. The Powers Gallery is across the street, but the Acton Concord Chabad is next door, and it looks like it's about 500 feet. So I'm not pointing this out because I think that there's any issue. I just want everybody to be aware that there is a religious group that meets across the street. Thanks.
Thank you. Liz Lashway, is that a problem? Is that something that you have to notify, if someone you have to notify?
It's not a problem. Everyone within 500 feet has been notified of the hearing, so there's no there's no problem. But there's no problem. I apologize if I missed that. I went through the abutters list that was provided to me from the assessor, and no churches, schools, or hospitals appeared from my perspective on that list, but everyone within 500 feet was notified of the hearing today.
Thank you. I see no more comments in the room, and I don't see anyone online. So I would take a motion to close the hearing.
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
Motion been made and seconded to close the hearing. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Okay, the hearing's closed. And now we'll vote. I will take a motion for a section 12, all alcoholic beverage license by RFG Golf, 145 Great Road in Acton.
So moved.
Second?
Second.
Motion's been made and seconded. All in favor of the motion is read, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? It's granted. Thank you. And we'll move right on. And if what you said earlier, Liz Lashway, that you don't need to make any further presentation, we'll move right into any questions by the. Well, actually, I need to read the notice. The Acton Select Board will hold a public hearing on October 18th, 2021 at 8:20 p.m. in the Francis Faulkner Hearing Room, 204 at the Town Hall, 472 Main Street, Acton, and virtually at www.actonma.gov. I think that's wrong. It's actonma/meeting/BOS, or from a telephone dial 646-876-9923. And enter the webinar ID 503-918-785. Telephone users may dial *9 to speak. Computer and app users may use the raise hand feature to speak. On the application of RFG Golf at LLC at 145 Great Road, Acton, under section 140 of the Massachusetts General Laws for a common vittler license, application can be inspected at Town Hall during normal business hours. Okay, so I'll take any questions from members of the board or the presenters. Questions?
Sure. We started in the slow process of moving away from fossil fuels in Acton because of the climate emergency. So we can't require you to use gas or not, but I am curious, and I'm happy to provide any, moral pressure. How will you be heating the food?
It's electric, so it's a single high-speed oven, maybe two high-speed ovens. They're about 3x3. You see them at Subway and Dunkin' Donuts and Starbucks. They're pretty small, but yeah, it's electric. I don't know if they make gas versions of that. It's called a Mary Chef. They're like a Turbo Chef oven. But again, that's probably something to look into, but I haven't seen one.
No, that's good. Electric is better.
Yeah, very happy.
Oh, electric's better. Okay. There.
Yeah, glad to know you're not pumping any, poisonous gases into your establishment.
Okay.
It's great. Thank you.
Other questions? And I'll just say again, for members of the public, any questions or comments? I see none in the room or none online, so I'll take a motion to close the hearing.
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
Motion's been made and seconded. All in favor of closing the hearing, say aye.
Aye.
And now I'll take a motion for a common vittler's license for RFG Golf LLC at 145 Great Road in Acton.
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
Motion's been made and seconded. All in favor of approving license, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? It's approved. Thank you.
Thanks so much.
Thank you.
Mr. Manager.
When are you opening? X Golf? Soon?
We hope to open early 2022. It all depends on construction timeline. So as soon as we can.
Thank you. Good luck.
Thank you very much.
Okay, we'll return to the portion of the agenda before the hearings.
Mr. Manager, I'll jump right to your update.
Thank you. So a few things. The Great Road Revitalization Plan was completed through the DHCD grant-funded program, the Local Rapid Recovery. That report is posted online, and we'll do some promotions this week to push it out to everybody so they can review it. It's got some good information in there for us to use going forward. A public hearing for the Hayward Road intersection is being planned for November 1st, which is the next select board meeting. That's an intersection that many people have asked about. So this will be a first look at some of the design concepts that Public Works has been working on, an opportunity for some public input. I wanted to mention and thank Sustainability Director Basaraf and the team from MAPC and other volunteers who helped with an open house event this past Saturday at Narrow Park. We think there was about 150 people there, and it was a great opportunity for people to discuss and help engage on climate action planning, and we'll be sharing the results of that work this shortly. Regarding COVID, cases are down to 8 right now in isolation, which is a trend we hope continues heading downward. And I wanted to mention that there are many things we did in the last year and a half to respond to the pandemic. One particular thing that I'm proud of is the Acton Town Services Hotline. This is a group of employees who, it wasn't any of their particular jobs, but they all stepped up to staff this hotline to make sure that residents with questions about COVID had someone live on the phone when they called. And so since April of 2020, this group has handled 2,500 calls. And of course, the first month or two, it was, are we allowed, is there a mask here? When's this business going to be open? Is the library going to open? It was all stuff like that we were dealing with before, but now it's more general customer service items, which I think is providing a very valuable service to the community. So I wanted to take a moment to thank the 23 employees that have been staffing this hotline for the last 18 months or so, and all led by Kristen Alexander, who's our GIS officer, but she's also been the hotline coordinator. So in addition to Kristen, we had Tara Bicknell, Kathy Breest, Kim Bricker, Kim Clark, Brian Cody, Austin Saganowitz, Linda Dallimore, Marianne Fleckner, Justin Flynn, Jennifer Friedman, Aaron Green, Yashira Gonzalez, Kim Gorman, Maura Haberman, Olga Camille, Becky LeBlanc, Alora Overstreet, Mary Lou Rapucci, Wei Sun, Lisa Tommel, Denise Whitney, and Terry Saborowski. So thank you to all those folks for helping us out.
Thank you. Does anybody have a member minute? Dean, please.
Yeah, I've got 3 items to go through fairly quickly. On Saturday, in addition to the work that Andrea Becerra was doing with the Climate Action Plan, I was pleased to see that she was out breaking up styrofoam boxes down at the Public Works building. And it's nice to see that the white-collar people wade right in with blue-collar people from DPW. So I was very pleased to see that, and it seemed like they're doing land office business there. Secondly, one of the items that we might be discussing tonight is work at the Asa Parlin House. The Design Review Board is actually going to be reviewing some of the plans in this room on Thursday night. So certainly, the public are certainly welcome. You usually don't see a lot of folks at DRB meetings, but this might be a great time for people to express their wishes. And finally, the Acton Conservation Trust on Saturday gave the Carol Hawley Environmental Stewardship Award to Bruce Rackman, who has done a huge amount of work building bridges and boardwalks and all sorts of construction projects throughout our conservation lands, including most notably and most obvious, the China Trail Bridge at the Arboretum was something that he built. And, Bruce and the rest of the land stewards have done a great job, and certainly Bruce was well deserving of that award. That's it.
Thank you. Anyone else? Jim.
I didn't have anything when I showed up, but a couple things have come up. The first thing is I didn't want people, especially Mr. Fochman, to be left with the impression that it was only Himaja who thought that there were harmful statements made at the last meeting. So I'm happy also to meet with you and chat, and we actually know how to walk from one house to the other. So yeah, good. The other thing was just how heartbreaking it was to hear your story, Madeline, and I'm really glad you came to us. And I know that the board members and the staff here are committed to figuring out what's gone wrong and figuring out how to fix it. It was very odd to go from hearing Madeline's story to hearing about golf simulators. So I didn't take that out on the applicant because I know it wasn't their fault, but it was just astonishing to go to get the extremes of a crappy apartment in Townhouse Lane and a really upscale establishment for people who dress extremely well and pay money in order to play golf inside of small building. It's just quite a contrast for me. I love that Acton has all sorts of people in all sorts of places, but it was hard to make that change. Thanks.
Thank you. Anyone else? Member Minute?
I just want to echo what Jim just said. The transition was odd, but.
Yeah, Jim, thank you so much. And I echo you 100%. I actually felt like I was being extremely diplomatic when I said that there were harmful statements said. So I look forward to our conversation. And Madeline, your story just underscores the importance of talking about the discrimination that happens in this town. And it occurs to people like you who's had their voices silenced by institutions within this town, and it's absolutely not okay. And so I look forward to there being a discussion around investigating this further and for us to hear as a select board updates on this. So yeah, that's what I have to say, but I really hope that we as a town continue to make inclusion a priority. It always has to be a priority. And I feel like I get really exhausted saying this every single time, but that's exactly why we have to say this every single time. So thank you so much for being here and for your bravery.
Dean.
Yeah, I'd like to ask the manager if he might be able to characterize exactly what involvement the Acton Select Board could have regarding a situation that's under the control of the Housing Authority, which is an independent commission.
Well, it's certainly something that the Board of the Housing Authority could hear, and I think it would be an appropriate place for that complaint to be brought, if it hasn't already, if I said that correctly. But I will investigate anything the board wants me to. So if you want me to, I will.
Thank you.
Yeah, I think that, frankly, there's quite a number of things that we can do. I mean, we heard a number of them in Ms. Cruz's story. She said several times that some things were not corrected until the Board of Health came out. Some other things she mentioned are, as far as the escape lights working during power outages, that's an issue for the fire department. There are other things she mentioned that might apply to different board departments. And also, well, we can act as mediators between Ms. Cruz and the Housing Authority. So, I think there's actually quite a bit we can do. I also want to say that, I can use the words black and white without being racist. There's nothing inherently racist about those words. And I stand by my statement that a white person cannot know racism. It's just not possible. We can learn about racism. You can spend a lot of time, I've personally spent a lot of time trying to understand racism, but I don't think we can really know it, So that's just my opinion, and I'll stand by that opinion.
Thank you so much, David.
Okay, we'll move on. The next thing is to discuss the new voting precincts, and I think we're going to have the...
Our town clerk, Eva, is in the virtual audience. If we could elevate her to panelist. Basically, the map that the board reviewed recently, we wanted to bring your attention to some changes and how it impacts some of the discussions that are happening with the state legislature as it relates to redistricting. Eva. There you are.
Hi, Eva. Would you mind if I asked you a quick question before we started on the precincts?
Sure.
Early on in our comments, someone was saying that we should send out notifications when we have a town election. I just wanted to verify with you that anybody in town can sign up to have a ballot mailed to them. Is that correct?
Yes.
Right, so not only can they get a
notification, they can get the thing that they need to mail back to actually vote.
Yes.
Thank you. Please go ahead with your, and tell us about the new precincts.
Okay, so I will do my best. I know that Kristen Alexander is on as well to help me with some of the GIS information in case there's any questions on that. So the state has, every 10 years does a re-precincting. 10 years ago, we added precinct 6. We're only allowed to have a max of 4,000 voters per precinct. We were getting pretty close to that, which created the additional precincts. So we will be going to 7 precincts. And that's what is gone to you right now, is to approve that map that we've put forward to you. The map went through our GIS coordinator, as well as our engineering department to look at the lines to see if the lines fell in an appropriate way. And we believe that they have in the way that we're presenting them to you. That's what I have.
Great. I assume that everybody has seen the new precincts in the packet. I just wanted to say, because I asked the question, is as of earlier today, the legislature had not assigned our precincts to the representative districts yet. So right now we're 3 and 3 in between the two, which is the 14th Middlesex and the 37th Middlesex. Obviously we won't be evenly divided. We'll have 4 and 1. Well, I don't know. I know that that the precincts are being moved, so maybe it won't even be close to even. But anyway, they're not assigned yet. Any questions for the town clerk? Jim.
Maybe, well, since you seem to just speak on this topic, David, maybe this is a question for you, but is it always the case that the state representative districts are divided strictly along town precinct lines? Or is that a whole separate process?
That I can't answer. That I don't know. As far as I know, that they've always been along a precinct line. I think this is the first year that it's seems to be different. My understanding is that they are using the 2010 maps. So the older precinct maps is what they're following, instead of the new ones that we're doing now.
Thank you.
Mhm.
So it's a little bit of an iterative process
Yeah.
with the state. Other questions? And we don't need to vote on these, right? Or do we need to approve them? No.
Any action you need us to take tonight, need the board to take tonight? Is there any action you need the board to take?
Yes, they actually need to vote to accept the map as we have presented it to them. And I know within the packet, there was a letter that they would need to sign for us to send to the state.
Okay, but before we do that, I will take comments from members of the public on the new precincts. If you're online, just raise your electronic hand. In the room, please go to the podium. So I don't see any.
Linda be here.
Matt, could you let Linda please speak?
Certainly. Linda, you've been unmuted.
Hi, Linda Vieira, North Acton. I'm just curious how many voters are in Acton, and how many would be in each precinct?
So we currently have, and I'm estimating because I don't remember the exact number, I'm estimating about 16,000. And we're looking at 35, I believe, per precinct, including the 7th precinct.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Any other questions or comments?
I'm sorry, just to clarify. So sorry, so you said there are 16,000 voters and how many per precinct?
They're putting in, as of the 2020 census, about 3,500 per each precinct, including a 7th precinct.
Great, thank you so much.
You're welcome.
Images, just so you know, the exact numbers are in the packet. Okay, so I will take a motion to accept the new precinct as defined in the packet.
So moved.
And is there a second?
Second.
Okay, the motion's been made and seconded. All in favor of the motion, please say aye.
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 Any opposed? Great, the motion passes. Thank you, Eva.
Thank you, everyone.
Okay, we'll move on to the ARPA funding. We finished up last time where we voted on all the items, and we isolated the ones that received 4 votes from at least 4 votes from members of the board. The town manager took that information and produced a proposal. John, I don't know if you want to speak to that.
Sure, thank you. So using the board's voting process that started during the deliberation of the previous meeting and all the feedback that was received in addition to that from the public, what was produced and presented to the board for its consideration tonight is a American Rescue Plan investment plan. And the basis of this plan is that I'm recommending that the board consider allocating portions of the funding for FY22 and FY23. Right now, it's October, so we're 1/4 of the way through FY22. And so I'm recommending that you allocate funding for the rest of this year and for FY23. And I'm recommending that the rest of the years be held in reserve. Any funding designated for those years be held in reserve so that the board has the opportunity to be able to react to any needs
that emerge or change as the years pass through. But essentially, the plan that was in the packet recommends an allocation of around $5 million out of the $7 million that the town is receiving, and that the rest of it be held in reserve. I'm happy to go through each line item of the investment plan if you'd like, and I have more details on each item if there's any questions about the items in the investment plan.
So we can just talk in just a minute about going through each item if members would like to do that. The first thing I would like to do is just to confirm one outstanding thing from last time, and that's that the $2 million for funding the school district, which in the town manager's proposal has $1 million this year, $500,000 next year, and $500,000 in reserve. I just want to confirm that we, with a thumbs up, thumbs down, that we want to do that. During the meeting last time, Himiger was momentarily offline, so only 4 of us voted. So I just wanted to confirm, so we're just doing thumbs up, thumbs down, that we're all okay with the $2 million, or at least 4 of us are okay with the $2 million. I know, Dean, you were not, at least last time. Okay, but you are, Fran. Okay, so that's 4 of us. How would you guys like to do this, right? So this is basically what we voted last time. I'm happy to go down each item in the manager's plan, or we can, as necessary, if you guys want to bring up individual questions or comments or proposed changes, we can do that. It seems to me that, again, I'm very happy to go through line by line if everybody wants to do that, but it might be more efficient to do it on an exception basis if people have questions or comments. Dean, please.
Yeah, I think it's a pretty good balanced approach that the manager has taken, and it certainly reflects the will of the vast majority. The only question that I've got is P9 regarding the sewer main extension, that everything is being put in reserve. Could you explain the process behind that, Mr. Manager? Is there going to be more study, or is there going to be more public discussion of this, or how do we get to a decision on that?
Yeah, thank you for the question. So for P9, that was to construct a sewer main extension to the Acton Housing Authority site at 364 Main Street and to provide opportunities for other properties along the way to connect. The purpose of this project was to construct a sewer main. The town received the Housing Choice Grant in the amount of $165,000 to do a feasibility study to see if it's feasible to connect over the bridge. We just completed that feasibility study. We're scheduled to present it to the board on November 1st. So I think we haven't had a chance to have that report really reviewed and considered by the board, acting as sewer commissioners. That's the primary reason that it was in reserve. We also, in addition to the feasibility study, we have about $140,000 remaining in design funding. If we wanted to move forward, if the board wanted to move forward, we have the funding to design it. So the cost to do this connection, if you read the feasibility study, it's penciled in at $1.4 million. We round it up in this case because things get more expensive every year at 1.5. We believe, or I believe, that having a sewer connection for this property would create more flexibility for how the Housing Authority building is constructed, and also provide for more flexibility on how the rest of the public property on that parcel is used by the town, either now or in the future.
Great, thank you.
So also, I just want to say, in our last meeting, that didn't meet the threshold of 4 of us. And I also want to clarify in the town manager's plan, in the FY22 or FY23 columns, what we'd be approving tonight is for the town manager would be authorized to release those funds when those projects came to fruition, right? So if they're ready to go, they meet the letter of the ARPA law, he can release those funds. The reserve amount would require an additional vote by us. So any fundings for future years, or if we want to add something, we could do that out of the reserve with an additional vote. And there's nothing to say that we don't have to wait 2 years to do that, right? We could do that before 2 years, so. Jim? I just called on Jim, so sorry.
Yeah, some more procedural questions about what being in reserves mean. It seems like it would also be an option for the board to decide, well, this money's in reserve for this thing, but now we understand a situation, we'd like to move that out of that category and put it in some other reserve or put it to some other use. Is that still a valid option? In other words, putting something that's only funded by reserves isn't committing us to do that particular thing. Is that true?
That is true. I think that's, those amounts there are kind of a reminder to us that, should we want to dip into the reserves and put that someplace, that we had been thinking about putting 300,000 here or 500,000 here, and we couldn't do that if we, did something else, right? So it's kind of a reminder to us, but we could do that. Okay.
Another procedural question. It seems like there is, if I'm understanding the math right, there is money that we've accepted that is not allocated or recommended for reserve. The subtotal of the reserve items right now is 1.35 million, and the total funding available for reserved items is a little over 2 million. So am I understanding it right that there's, around 700,000 that is in some sort of like super secret reserve or an extra reserve, or where's that money?
So
It's not super secret.
Okay. I figured it wouldn't be.
So the reason that it's shown in gray on this table that was produced as part of the plan is to show that it's a reserve, it's a placeholder. In some cases where the board held a vote at last meetings, and I think there was support in the amount of 4 members for a specific amount, that is the specific amount shown in reserve. In other cases where I wasn't able to determine the consensus of the board, it's simply shown as a reserve amount. And so that any of these numbers in reserve are subject to the priorities of the town in the future. And, this is something that the board would review on an annual basis, if not sooner, depending on how quickly these new needs emerge or as needs shift. But it's important, I believe, for the board to sort of set the framework of this is what we know. We know the things, and this is my recommendation, but you can change any of these numbers shown in black and white. But the sort of what's in black and white is sort of the framework. What's in gray is what we think we want to do, but that there's a lot of opportunity to make sure that any other needs are covered or priorities may shift if necessary, so that the full 7 million isn't committed in one evening.
So if I could just make an additional comment, so that 700,000 would cover all the things that just have the word reserve in them, as opposed to a specific value in the last column, right? But there's not enough for all those, right? So, 700,000 would not cover all those. We need to, to the extent in future years or future, at some point in the future, we want to fund some of those using the 700,000. We can distribute them among those, but probably not all of them. Or we could take some from some area that we had previously, put in a specific value, but we could change that value.
Got it. Thank you.
Did you have more questions, Jim?
Yeah, one more follow-up question, which is, how do you want to handle a discussion about items that aren't listed on the proposal, but that, that we had discussed previously, that hadn't quite made the threshold?
I'll come back to that in just a minute.
Great.
And we can talk about that.
Yeah.
Himiger, you had?
Yeah, also just a quick clarifying question. So for the reserve items, if we voted as a select board to approve funding allocation to a certain item, could that be used for fiscal year 22 or 23? Like it could apply to any year?
You know, I think it probably could, but these are the 2 years that we're expecting them to fall. The reserves are for the future, but it could be, again, in any year, right? So if we, I don't know, got to next spring, we could approve something for fiscal 23 if we wanted to do that.
Got you. Okay, so if we see if we see a need right now for like a certain item, that's something we could vote on at like a future select board meeting sometime this year.
That's correct.
Okay.
Or as Jim is maybe going to be doing in just a few minutes, suggest that we modify the plan a bit, right? We could add another line to the plan. We could change a 5 to a 6, you know, somewhere in here or something like that. So if, you know, we'll see what changes, you know, you guys would like to make tonight. And then my goal would be, if we don't have too many changes tonight, that we vote on the plan as modified or as not modified. Jim, first, Fran, did you have any questions? Then Jim, do you want to make a proposal or discuss a particular possible change? Or?
Yes. An item came up late in the process about transportation. And one of the reasons I think I was the only one that voted for it, was because there wasn't a lot of detail involved in it, and also because there was the chance that the way it was described implied that we would be hiring a driver or drivers, and we didn't want to have hiring in the in these items if possible, because it created a requirement for continuing to hire them in the future that wasn't funded by ARPA. So I wanted to make a pitch for putting money in reserves, putting the transportation item back on the plan and putting it in the reserve column. There are a lot of transportation programs that can use support, from the taxi voucher program, which will be, has some funding, but will be running out of its funding. There's micro transit options. There's the option about having what you might think of as a chaser van, a small chaser van that would expand the capabilities of the fixed route program to make it more flexible. And in any of these programs, typically the way we've done them is we've contracted for services, either with the RTA, our Regional Transit Authority, or with a private entity, so that any of those programs that required additional people would not be hires by the town. It would be simply services provided by a private or public agency. I think that transportation, people who rely on public transportation are in very dire straits. They have been really hurt badly, both by the pandemic and by the way that the pandemic shut down a lot of our transportation options. So I'd like to make room for building back those transportation programs in a way that meets more needs. And since we don't know which specific program that belongs in, it seems like putting it in the reserves column to be considered with all these other things would be prudent. So it's what I wanted to recommend.
So I personally, I think that that's a good idea. I completely agree with you that that transportation is critically important, and that what we had in the run-up to the ARPA priorities was not detailed, at least for me, was not detailed enough to vote on, right? In fact, I saw a contradiction. As you said, it's some people have been hit hard by COVID. They really need transportation. Yet the highlight of the request was for electric vans. And the fact of the matter is, we can serve people who've been hit by COVID with gasoline-powered or diesel-powered vans. I think electric vans are a good thing, but it's a completely separate issue. It doesn't have to deal with, the power source of the vans doesn't have it all to deal with serving the people who have been affected by COVID, right? So at least to me. And so, and also some of the things that were talked about using those vans were the programs that I had heard were less successful, right? So for me, I didn't have enough information. But I would be happy to add a line with the original request with just the word reserve in the last column. Would everybody else be okay with that?
Yeah, and I actually wanted to add to that, and I just wanted to also thank Franny for the additional information that she sent. I had a chance to sit in on a MAGIC meeting, which is the Minuteman Advisory Group on Interlocal Communication, and that was really eye-opening. There's a lot of towns that are currently using their ARPA funds for transportation, and I think that adding a line to our current proposal on transportation is a fabulous idea.
So in the way we did the others, can I just get a thumbs up, thumbs down from members to add a line to the plan? So I got 5 thumbs up for that. John, are you okay? Just adding a line with no allocation in FY22 and FY23, and we'll reserve in the final column that says something like transportation programs. Yes. So in my sheet, the one that I used, I had it as P99 because it wasn't assigned a number. So you could look at my sheet because it was not in the town manager's original list of possible priorities, and so I added it to my spreadsheet as P99. Okay. Is there anything, John? The original request amount was $450,000. Jim?
In the description of the big regional school district item, it lists the priority items that are supposed to be part of that. And there is an error in that list, and it might impact our decision-making process. So I wanted to note that P38, P39, and P44 are actually not school district items. If we wanted to fund them, we would, at least that's in the spreadsheet that that Jason had and that David had. Those were not listed as school district items. So if we want to fund them, we would need to take them out of that clump and consider them.
Right. I think those might have been overlapped because, like, especially P38 and 39 were items for community benefit, if you will. P44 also could be considered an item for community benefit. But I agree that maybe we should delete those from that list.
So P38, it shows up 2 lines below that, so that is a typo that was included there. And just to clarify, a large portion of the child care subsidies that we have been providing do go to the school district for all-day kindergarten tuition or extended day tuition. So it is supporting school district programs. But yeah, it does need to be in there twice, certainly.
Great. In addition, P3 and P4 are marked as school district items. So it seems like we should probably list them so that the schools could, my understanding is that, maybe I should take a step back here. My understanding is that we were going to allow the school district to sort of pick and choose among these items or make proposals to us about how to spend them, or how is that going to work?
So the reason why I proposed this last time is it was very difficult to figure out how we would coordinate with Boxborough on an individual program. It seemed to me that there were 2 reasonable ways of handling that. Acton would pay for some programs in their entirety, and Boxborough would pay for some programs in their entirety, or the 2 select boards would have to choose the same list, and we'd pay for them 85-15%. Both of those were really difficult to coordinate, and besides that, it didn't allow, and also at that time, the school committee had not prioritized the proposed list from the superintendent. So that list that the manager got was from the superintendent. The school committee has since worked on the priority of that list. It's in the packet of their last meeting. You can go look at it. I might even be able to find it if
I've seen it in my mail, yeah.
Okay, so the school committee has prioritized those, but this program would be that the school district would request anything that they'd wanted out of the $2 million, divided up into these fiscal years, and as long as it met the letter of the law, we would approve that grant.
Okay, then this sounds like more of a bookkeeping correction, just to add P3 and P4 there, so we would know.
Yes, I think that's right. You got that too, John?
Perhaps the entire description isn't necessary, and it could just be Acton Boxborough School District requests, for example.
Fine by me.
Yep.
Okay.
So that does leave us to consider if we want to fund P38, P39, P38's already funded, P39, and what is P44?
So P39 last time only got 3 votes.
Okay.
So if we're going to go into the 3 vote things, that is a very deep hole, right? And I would prefer not to do that because if we take our 3 vote things, we're already oversubscribed and we have nothing for future years. And we can always come back to the P3 things when we have a little bit, the 3 vote things, when we have more perspective. But given that, I certainly don't want to go through, I would propose that we not go through all of them.
Great.
But if you have a specific one that you want us to consider tonight, we can add a line like the transportation line.
I don't even remember what P39 is, sadly, so I don't know whether I want to advocate for it or not.
It's workshops and programs related to mental health, equity, and empathy.
Oh, wasn't that one of our short-term goals?
I think our short-term goals had social services.
Oh, okay.
But this is related to it, certainly. But again, I'm hesitant to choose one thing that had 3 votes without broadening it to look at all the things that had 3 votes. Because who's to say that this one, of all the 3 vote things, is the highest one of the 3 vote things?
Okay, got it.
Himija?
Yeah, actually, a quick question, but actually kind of related to Jim's question. If there are any 3 votes that we want to re-poll people for, given this new reserve system, could we do that?
If you have a specific thing that you think is, we want to ask us about, I'm fine with that. Especially if you think that it is, more strongly supported by the board than the other 3 vote things, right? So,
Yeah, I was personally thinking about P20, updating the existing complete street plan to improve infrastructure for pedestrians, bicyclists, and motorists, just kind of in line with strategic planning and increasing accessibility throughout town. I was wondering maybe if we re-polled and see if we get more than 3, that might be helpful.
okay. Do you want to just, before we do a thumbs up, do you want to say why and try to convince fellow board members to your point of view?
Sure, absolutely. So for me, I think that we should reconsider this one just because, we currently have a complete street plan, but I think that it could definitely be improved and added upon, and thinking about how we can make our town a more friendly environment for pedestrians and people who use these common spaces, I think is very much in line with what we're talking about when we're talking about transportation and improving the quality of our town. And I think that, this is an important step to being able to make our town more equitable in many ways.
Okay. John, can you correct me if I'm wrong, that the complete street plan is something that, updating it is something that has started and this is enough money to finish that effort? Is that right? Or am I?
It's, we annually review our complete streets programs and plan for capital planning, but there was an actual study that was done with the consultant to create the prioritization, and that hasn't been updated since 2016. And so this would be an opportunity to sort of look at all the needs that we're aware of, given all the, you know, we're doing road safety audits and intersection designs and complete street designs all over town. Sort of taking all of that information and looking at it with one lens instead of in isolation, focused on specific initiatives like we have been. So it's something that we would do and try to do, but there hasn't been a concerted effort with an outside independent consultant to do it. We just kind of do our best to do that every year.
And if we did this, would this be, from your point of view, an FY23 thing?
It would be something that we would do next year, yes.
Okay. So any other comments on, before I ask for a thumbs up, thumbs down on I'm sorry, I lost it, P20. Dean, please.
Yeah, so as I see it, we've got it listed as reserve, so I think.
Oh, did I miss it?
Yeah, P20 is for reserve, so, you know, if you want to move it instead of a reserve, put it into 23, that's one question, but I suspect the town manager might have been thinking about maybe finding some other sources of funding to do that upgrade that could come around.
Yeah, it was something that potentially has an opportunity to be funded otherwise. And
So maybe we just leave it the way it is?
Let's leave it the way it is. Yeah, I missed that. Apologies.
Yeah, I missed that too. Other comments? The only thing that, I'll come back to you in just a second. The only thing which I would like to bring up, and so far, it's funding the private NAGOG wastewater treatment plant infiltration improvements seems like it might not fit into what's legal under the ARPA law.
Oh.
But I'm wondering if we want to put that, $300,000 in reserve so that it can be, John's told me that's still under investigation. And so if it does end up being legal, did I miss that as well? So I think.
yeah, it's in there for 150 in FY23 and then the rest in reserve. I have had additional conversations with our financial consultant. It wouldn't be eligible. One of the main criteria for investments in wastewater and water is that it has to be eligible under the state's drinking water loan program or whatever it's called. But it could be potentially something that we do out of revenue replacement, but there's only a capped amount of money that we have. We've calculated to be 2.25 million that we can use on this list for revenue replacement items. So, I think it would have to be something that we look at carefully and make sure that it doesn't take away from the other revenue replacement items that the board has already approved. So that's why I have it in there as 150 with the rest in reserve so that we can figure that out as time passes and more information. For example, we just got guidance from the state at 5 o'clock this afternoon. And I reviewed it quickly, and most of it is consistent with what we've been doing. But if it wasn't, I would have been concerned.
Okay, good. Okay, so that to me is fine the way it is. Anything else someone wants to bring up? Dean.
Yeah, again, going back to the school allotment, we've got P44. That actually is related to the Acton Water District PFAS, which shows further up on P44 as well. So that's another one that.
Yeah, that's one of the ones that Jim crossed out.
Yep.
Okay.
Yep.
Did you have a comment?
Crossed out?
Oh, so in his first comment, Jim said that these things were not related to the school district.
Oh, okay.
And so we took them out of that, and then actually the manager said probably the whole description of that one needs to change. So
I actually had a quick question about that item. So I was wondering what the justification was for the allocation of 450 for fiscal year 2022, and then the rest in reserve. Was the water district consulted at all with that distribution?
Yes, so I've been working with Chris Allen, the director over at the Water District, on exactly what they were planning to do with the $2 million that was requested at a recent meeting. And basically, they're going to work on a plan to add equipment to the North Acton plant to mitigate PFAS. It hasn't been designed yet, and they haven't started the design, and there hasn't been a source for the rest of the money in terms of if it being $6 million. So this $450,000 is the cost to design the improvement, with the idea being that if we use this funding to help them get the design shovel ready, it would put them in a position to seek other funding. And if the board decides to allocate the remaining $550 out of the reserve, if it's going to make a measurable difference to what they need to do, the board can decide to do that at a later time.
Great, thank you.
And Jim?
I think I only have one more question about an item that's not on the list. And this would be P12, which is the Acton Water District water main upgrades in Kelly's Corner, which they'd originally asked us for, and then they said, no, we'll happily withdraw this. We'll find a way to fund it, because really what we desperately need money for is the PFAS. They're still going to need to do that. You know, and if they were withdrawing that request just in the hopes that we would actually listen to them about PFAS, we've actually listened to them about PFAS. We've actually allocated them that money. And I wonder if if we want to add back in that $100K for that expense, which will happen when, Kelly's Corner is opened up.
I second that 100%.
So that in my mind is a water district expense. First of all, I think opening up the streets and everything is covered as part of the project. They had wanted to do some upgrades while the streets were open. That's really up to them, right? There are lots of upgrades that they do, and they were made a separate fiscal entity. It's not up to us to fund them, right? They were made a separate fiscal entity for a reason, right? That was the decision made before any of us were involved in that. So, I don't think we should be funding everything. I mean, I think the PFAS thing is a special situation for two reasons. One is the PFAS has only hit us for the last couple of years, where we didn't know about it before that. And secondly, if the bipartisan infrastructure bill passes Congress, we want to be shovel ready to be able to do that, the treatment of the PFAS, right? And so if we're able to fund a design out of these monies, that'll put us in a good position to be able to, or them actually, to be in a good position to request a grant to fund the entire plant. So I'm happy. Go
ahead. Sorry, you were finishing up.
Dean, please go ahead.
Yeah, I'm going to agree with David on this one. I mean, the $100,000, it seemed like kind of a flyer they sent to us. What they really wanted was PFAS, and we're addressing that. Not to as much as they would have wanted, but we're taking a good stab at it. They have a source of funds, which is the ratepayers. And I got to figure that $100,000 spread out amongst the 95% of the users in Acton, that's going to be a penny on your bill. So I think we probably have got other places that would be more important to place this money.
Just if I could speak to the responsibility question, part of the issue here is that in the design of our Kelly's Corner plan, we've placed islands and other pieces of the infrastructure in such a way that the existing pipes have a really high chance of being crushed or damaged, and that this was not there was not sufficient communication between the town and the water district on this design matter. So we are in effect causing this need to happen. So that's why I think we bear some responsibility for paying for it.
I don't,
Can I just
go, please
say-
go.
might not help at all, but can we move P45 150 to P44? I mean,
You mean combine them?
combine them. Well, if this doesn't go, this might not go. Am I not understanding this?
So the board can move any number from anywhere on this chart to another place on this chart. But I would just note that several items were requested from several entities, and very few were withdrawn. This is an example of one that was withdrawn.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I get that.
And I think that's the normal question. I mean, the same thing happens to the sewer pipes that run under Kelly's Corner, right? And there's not a special allocation to the sewer reserves, the revolving funds for the sewers to pay for those either, right? So I think that's just a normal course of things. And I think, again, the PFAS thing is a new thing, an unexpected thing. That's a bit of a different story, I think.
Just to add a little bit more nuance to Jim's point. So based on the conversations I've had with the AWD commissioners, it seems that, the allocation of $100K for Kelly's Corner was only a fraction of the cost of what it would actually cost them to remodel that area. And this is something that is inevitable and is going to happen. So just to add other context, and it was a priority, and it is a priority for them to do it. But, with the PFAS issue, it came down to priority. So this is still a priority for them, and if we could fund it, that would be great. But definitely, it's up to the consensus of the board for sure.
But so the standard for me is we'd be saying that that's more important than all these other things that we didn't, that got 3 votes last time. I just don't see that. If you guys want to do a thumbs up, thumbs down on this, that we can do that. I think, to me, I'd want to make sure that it was more important than all the other things we didn't include in the original voting, right? There's what, about 10 things or something, and maybe a few fewer that got 3 votes. All of those I think were important things. So, what do people think? Do we want to?
Yeah, let's check and see where we're at. I'm happy to be outvoted.
Again, it's not just the vote on this thing, right? If this passes, does that mean we should revote all the 3 vote things?
No, this actually had 0 votes because we didn't even consider voting for it because the water district had withdrawn it. So I think this is a special case.
Okay, then why don't we see a show of thumbs? 2 up. So that's a 2 vote thing. Okay, anything else here?
I had just had some questions on some specific items, but I don't have any other overall questions about new items.
I'm also going to take short remarks from the public. Do you want to ask those questions before the public comments from the manager?
That's fine. I'm happy to wait. I'll get my notes more clear anyway.
Okay. If people have short comments, I'll take them now. We're already running very late. I'd like each comment to be less than a minute, please.
Hi, Franny Osmond. This will be very short. Thank you for putting transportation back in. And I just wanted to clarify that there are 2 very different parts that are both important. One is making our vehicles electric and getting a smaller vehicle, which is more nimble and can replace some of our big ones chugging around and taking too long. And the other was improvements to the, and making more flexible the fixed routes. So Anyway, thank you.
Thank you. Alyssa Nickel. I have a clarifying question. The items that are on this one-page chart, are these all going to be approved tonight, or are some of them coming off?
So I think the vote that I would like to take tonight is to adopt this plan, which says that the things that are on this, the one-pager that have allocations in FY22 or FY23 are approved for funding.
Okay.
Things that have just a number or the word reserve in the reserve column would be subject to a future vote.
So not the north treatment plant that is still under investigation, but the other two sewer items only received 2 and 3 thumbs up, but they are both on this list. So are those, I don't have it in front of me, so I don't know if it has a number or reserve, but I'm confused by the threshold that you applied at your meeting 2 weeks ago being 4 thumbs up, why these 2 items are on this list.
So I think that in the case of the sewer item for going crossing Route 2 for the AHA project, that has no monies allocated out of reserve in here, and it's on this list because it was actively under debate during our last meeting.
Okay.
Hopefully that answers your
Yeah,
question.
that does. So I just wanted to say one thing. I know you've heard a lot from me on sewers in the survey and email and here at the mic, but just something to consider is that the Acton Housing Authority, although it will not have to pay a sewer betterment, will have to pay sewer usage as long as that building has residents. There are lots of people, my neighbors on School Street, who have not hooked up yet to the sewer because they just replaced their septic before the sewer was laid down 20 years ago. I have a neighbor who just hooked up to sewer a couple of years ago because she was getting some work done on her driveway. And it sounds to me similar to the Kelly's Corner infrastructure initiative. It's going to be ripped up anyway. Why don't we take the opportunity to do it? So she paid that betterment fee along with maintaining her septic. As soon as she hooked up to sewer, her wastewater treatment bill tripled. So just keep that in mind for the Acton Housing Authority. Thanks.
Thank you. Matt, could you take the online request, please?
Absolutely. First up, we have somebody logged in as the Acton Dog Park Committee.
Okay, good evening. This is Tom Gillespie. Sorry for the moniker mix-up. Can you all hear me okay?
Yes.
Okay, great. Thank you. So just a quick message. Thank you again for all of your hard work and the late night on this. I am, again, a supporter of P9. I think the town manager's comments early on about P9 in terms of the benefits and flexibility to multiple projects within the town speaks well to why that hopefully can be potentially reconsidered. I believe at the last meeting, it was, not everyone had a chance to sort of fully consider the item, et cetera. So that might be something warranting a little bit of a quick review. And then I personally am in favor of this because of its strong infrastructure nature. I think that a lot of the ARPA funds are, spread across multiple different areas, but I think infrastructure is an important one of those, very consistent with how the monies were set for people to use. And so it's a nice, solid infrastructure type project. And I thank you for your consideration.
Thank you, Tom. I just want to say 2 things. One is, I think at our next meeting, we're going to be having a sewer commissioners meeting where we'll be presented with the feasibility study of this. And secondly, I just wanted to make sure, and I checked on this and I realized that it needs further work. And I know I've spoken to you about this, that this the septic system that's proposed for the AHA project needs
Further
further
understanding, right? I don't believe that it will be mounted 10 feet above current grade. I believe it'll be mounted about 4 feet to 5 feet above current grade. So because the groundwater there is about 4 to 5 feet below current grade. So I just wanted to clarify that.
Thank you, David. Yeah, some good discussions have been taking place, and we're very appreciative of that.
Thank you. Next caller, please, Matt.
Absolutely. Next up, we have call-in user number 1.
Hi, this is Tara from West Acton. Can you hear me? Yes. I'm concerned because of similar things that Alyssa had said, that there are items, the sewer, P9 only got 3 votes, yet it's suddenly on the plan. And I would urge you that if you do decide to give that money to the development, that the developer be required to provide more 30% median income, or else give money back, because they got the grant, they got the property, they got all this money from the town with the understanding that they had to pay for the septic. So if they aren't going to pay for the septic, and I do have concerns about the ongoing costs, but that aside, if you decide to give that money to that development, that the money should come back to us, the town, or to the affordability levels, as opposed to going into the developer's pocket. P11, that's the Great Road sewer, got only 2 votes. So why is it even in the plan? It's my studies indicated that the business users that voted for that indicated that they were not told that it would cost them money. First of all, they were told it was free. And then if you look at the actual survey results, it seems that it wasn't as popular as the pro-sewer people would have led you to believe. And it seems that if we want to spend money on businesses, that we should give it to rent relief or sustainability, as opposed to, real relief. Secondly, when somebody's talked about the reserve, I think it was John Mangiarotti, the town manager, and said what we think we want to do. And I urge you to be careful with what goes into that reserve, as long as I don't think you want it to be indicated that that's a plan. And then the last thing is that I'm in support of transportation item and more rent relief over a sewer studies. This is money that's supposed to be used for helping people now who've been hurt. And the logic of not doing transit is supportive of the same logic to not do the sewer. So I am in support of transportation because that is more current and more immediate, but I am most in favor of immediate relief to the people who've been hurt the most, the rent relief. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Next up, we have Stella.
Hi. I know this is kind of late in the game, but Senator Sonia Chang Diaz released a ARPA spending rubric, and I hope that as you're making final decisions, you'll kind of rate our decisions against that racial equity scorecard. Thank you.
Next up, we have Kim.
Hi, this is Kim Castens from 294 Pope Road. Can you hear me?
Yes. Mm-hmm.
I'm speaking in favor of P44, the PFAS at the North Acton water treatment plant. I just wanted to point out that this very day, the Environmental Protection Agency has released an agency-wide plan for a roadmap for PFAS remediation, which just reinforces the wisdom of the decision that you've made today to allocate money to PFAS mitigation locally. And also, I'd like to encourage you to come through with the remaining $450,000, which is in the grade category, when the time is appropriate for that. Thank you.
Thank you.
And the last remote user we have with their hand up is Erica.
Hi, good evening. This is Erica Amir-Lynn with NAGOG Treatment Facility. Thank you for keeping us in consideration. I just wanted a little bit of clarification on the status of our item, given the legal question that's open at the time.
So we're going to have to work with you further on that. That
currently
shows
$150,000 in next year, and the rest in reserve. But we have to come up with a a mechanism by which that's legal for us to fund you.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, I am available for future conversation. Thank you.
Yeah, we're studying that with the expert accountant, or the accountant who's an expert on ARPA, and as the town manager mentioned, the revenue replacement category is a more flexible category, but there's a cap on the total percentage there, and so it may be able to be put there, but we're still looking at that.
Okay, great, thank you.
So I think
that's
the
the last comment. So
anybody want to say anything before we vote on it? Jim?
Sure. I wanted to note out loud and thank the town manager for changing the P11 description, taking out the word sewer and changing it to improving wastewater infrastructure. That gives us the flexibility to understand if there's, local package treatment plant solutions, if there's wastewater treatment district solutions. There's a wide variety of ways of dealing with wastewater that aren't sewers. And I appreciate that that's in there. It helps me change my sense of support from no way to yeah.
Okay, any other comments before we vote? Imogen.
Just a really quick thing. Thank you, Stella, for pointing out the scorecard that Senator Chang Diaz put out. I was just reviewing it, and I think it's so important that we continue to look at it from an equity lens and really making sure that the items listed here are really targeting the hardest hit populations and that we're doing our due diligence with that. So thank you.
Thank you. Okay, I would take a motion to adopt the plan from the town manager with the addition of the transportation item as discussed and the change to the school district description as discussed.
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
Okay, Himmager moves, Dean seconds. All in favor of this plan, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? It's adopted unanimously. Thank you. And final item for tonight, other than consent items, is the discussion of the street trees on High Street. This item was added to the agenda by Jim and Fran, so would one of you like to?
After you, Jim.
Okay, sure. I actually wrote something up, so why don't I run through it? So I asked for the step, I didn't know that Fran had too, because I think the board missed some steps in our handling of the Bumblebee Way tree removal, and I thought reviewing it and discussing it might help us understand, what went wrong or how we can avoid similar problems in the future. And the topics had a lot of public involvement, including a lot of letters to the board, so I thought a public airing of the process would be helpful. First, a bit of background, because this issue's had some twists and turns. So we have July 21, 2020, there was a combined planning board tree warden hearing to determine if Seal Harbor Development would be allowed to remove the 2 street trees on High Street as part of their recently permitted development. It was adding a new street, Bumblebee Way, connecting to High Street. The tree warden okayed the removal of the 2 trees, a 35-inch oak and a 44-inch oak. Questions were then raised about whether one or more appeals had been registered about this decision on time and in the right manner, which would have stopped the tree hearing and moved the hearing to the select board. So the select board met on August 10th, 2020, and we discussed the tree hearing process and eventually reached an agreement with the developer that adequate notice, in fact, had been received and that a tree hearing would be held by the select board August 24th. So then we get to August 24th, the town manager announced that an agreement had been reached with the developer to not remove the trees, to move Bumblebee Way a bit so that it wouldn't go directly through the large tree. There was a concern raised that the new location would still tend to create a lot of stress and damage on the trees. The developer put some money into the tree fund and agreed to pay for removal of the trees if they failed before 2025. Then the issue sat there, and the trees sat there and continued to grow for more than a year until a new resident of Bumblebee Way, because now it was actually having actual real residents living there, came to the board in July of 26, asking us to revisit the situation because the trees were creating line-of-sight safety issues at the intersection of Bumblebee Way and High Street. They described quite eloquently the process of, creeping up around this gigantic tree to see if a car was coming at them, and, they'd say, probably not, and then dash out. It didn't seem like a great situation. There was a range of opinions on the board about how to proceed, but the board was able to agree that the town manager should work with staff and the developer to bring back a possible resolution of this problem to the board. Then at our September 13th meeting, the manager reported as follows. Manager and tree warden worked with the developer, and the resolution they identified is to have the developer remove these 2 trees. They are not in great condition as far as trees go, and the police department confirmed that they create a hazardous condition. The developer will be planting 6 significant trees, 4 maples, and 2 oaks at locations to be approved by the tree warden to continue the corridor of trees on High Street. So here's where I think things started to go a little bit wrong. I mean, we didn't have a discussion or vote among the board about whether this resolution met with the satisfaction of the board. We also didn't have this topic on our agenda, so no one in the public who might have wanted to speak up about this was notified. In addition, in my member minute, after acknowledging the manager's report and noting the solution was not one I had been advocating for, I said I was still glad the issue had been resolved because of the safety issues. So I was misremembering our process. At that point, I was thinking that we had actually delegated this to the town manager, that it didn't have to come back to the board. And my statement along those lines might have led other members of the board to think that we didn't need a formal vote by the board, that we'd pre-authorized the manager. And as a final part of this sort of cascade of errors, the September 13 minutes, which I'm responsible for, did not reflect the manager's statement and my response. So when a couple weeks later, the trees were taken down, we started getting letters questioning how this decision had been made. People were astonished because they didn't see anything in the minutes that said we'd decided this. So what now? So I have submitted amended minutes for September 13th that we can approve at our next meeting in November that include those items. And I just wanted to apologize for my misremembering the process we'd agreed on and implying that we didn't have to have this discussion. And I wanted to apologize to the people that were astonished and upset to find that the trees were removed and had no idea why or how that had been decided. And I just was wondering if, my fellow board members or the manager or the public had any additional reflections about the process.
Well, I think, the last couple of years has been such focus on street trees. And I think it's going to happen more and more frequently as more of these little subdivisions get put in, around existing trees and existing infrastructure. I think, one of the things we did recently was we established a new policy, select board policy for evaluating, the value of trees. So I think that's a good start. I think we've alerted the staff on all levels, especially the planning staff, that this is a major issue and that, it's very difficult to, I've read a lot of emails back and forth about people saying, well, you should hold the hearing on the trees first before you hold all the other hearings. But I know from speaking with town council, it gets a little bit complicated as far as the timing in which, for instance, the planning board has to act on certain permits. And I know conservation wants to take the first bite at it, and everybody wants the first bite at it. So I think we have to realize that we have to be sensitive to make sure that all of these interests are represented. And I think town staff has certainly got the message. I know that the tree warden now is much more intimately involved with the review process of these things. So I think these things get flagged earlier on. And I think, you know, the kind of discussion that we had with the new resident of Bumblebee Way and the information that he brought forward is probably the sorts of things that we should have spoken about more clearly in our first hearing, to, you know, visualize these things and visualize the problems with not only the condition of the tree and accept, you know, the professional opinion of our tree warden, but also we should have visualized more carefully what sort of traffic safety issues we were going to have. So I think, you know, a lot of things that should have happened earlier in the process ended up happening later on, and we all looked, we all kind of stumbled around in the dark. So, you know, I think it's regrettable. I don't, from a professional point of view, as a certified arborist, I don't have any problem with the decision that was reached and that the trees should have been removed. But I do regret that it was a really messy process that should not have gone awry the way it did.
Other comments? Sure. Mr. Manager.
Sure. So with the varying circumstances surrounding this tree over the last year and a half, my obligation ultimately fell to safety. And that's why a decision I made that I brought forward to the board for feedback felt was the right thing to do.
So I'd just like to say that I attended the original planning board hearing and objected to the tree removals from the beginning. In fact, I might have even been the first one. My goal at that time was to make sure that there were substantial trees that replaced the trees that needed to be removed. I mean, I think that, you know, all of us who have a place to live in town, trees were taken down to make that place to live, right? It's just a fact. It's, you know, trees were taken down for every one of our houses. But to me, it was, you know, I'm a nearby neighbor. I'm not a legal abutter, but I'm a nearby neighbor, and I wanted to make sure that the trees were replaced. After that, the developer refused, actually, then, and then they moved the driveway. And I asked the question in the first tree hearing at the select board about the sight lines, and I felt that I was given a deceptive answer, frankly, from the developer's engineer, that there was no problem in the sight lines, which was obviously not true. And frankly, I didn't take the time to review the design at that level of detail myself. Possibly I should have reviewed it myself. But I didn't. I do think it's important the changes that Dean proposed and that we adopted to the policy. I think those were not in effect when this project started. And I'll say finally, I don't think that there were errors in the end of the process. I don't think we can ask. From my point of view, we asked. The town manager heard all of our comments, and we asked the town manager to negotiate a solution. We can't ask the town manager to negotiate a solution and then veto it, right? That gives him no basis for his negotiation, right? So either he's negotiating the solution or we're negotiating the solution, right? If we don't trust him to negotiate the solution or don't want him to negotiate the solution, then we should have the developer in here and we'll negotiate it, all five of us, right? But once it's negotiated, having it come back to us for a veto, that makes no sense to me at all. Because what's being negotiated, right? So I don't agree with the comments about the end of the process being flawed, but I completely agree that it's been a hugely messy process. I feel deceived by the developer, and I think the new street tree policy is better than the old one. Other comments?
I just wanted to add that it's sort of frustrating, and was wondering if there was a way to come up with a process when a developer first comes to, present his plan. And I too knew that the driveway was supposed to be in a different space. I don't know if it was supposed to be between these two trees, but I don't know what makes something change in a design fashion. I think the topography of a plot that's being developed, everything on it should be considered initially. So.
I think originally the driveway was where there's a stone wall, and the stone wall would have had to be moved, and that was part of the original planning board hearing. And I think, I couldn't swear to this, but I think in the original design, the stone wall moved, and just one of the trees was affected. Because of some of the objections, they moved the driveway to a place that they said didn't have any sightline, so they could save both sightline problems. So said so we could save both trees, but we turned out and then not being able to save either tree. Imogen.
Yeah, I just actually wanted to echo what Fran said. I think that, or I guess also kind of just a question, what is our textbook definition of how to deal with these situations? Because kind of like what Dean said, this isn't going to be a one-time issue. There are going to be situations where we do have to consider the removal of trees, whether it's for public safety or other reasons. But we should, if we don't have a process yet established, one that gives ample time for public feedback, one that allows us to reach to our different committees and ask for feedback in an appropriate amount of time, and one that allows us as a town to kind of make a decision before potentially hearing biases from the developers or other people kind of involved on the project. I think that if we don't have a process established that kind of takes that into account, we really need one.
So there is a process, and actually, unless it's appealed to us, it doesn't involve us. It's just a planning board process. The policy changes we made, what were they, Dean, at the very beginning of this year that you proposed, and we adopted them, which really are very helpful, where we changed the value of the trees when they're removed, so that the price that the town has to be compensated if a developer takes one of their trees. It hadn't been changed in a long time, and we made a change. And the replacement trees.
There are two laws that govern this that are really not particularly under the control of the select board. One is Mass General Law, Chapter 87, which sets up, that's the Shade Tree Protection Act, goes back to 1889, that sets up the way these hearings are held, the way the postings are done. So there is a state law that governs that, and really the select board only gets involved if there's an appeal, which is what happened there. The other law, the state statute fails me at this moment, but it's the Scenic Roads Law, which is a state enabling legislation which the town has accepted for certain roads. And that's really under the control of the planning board. So, certainly there should be a lot of more involvement. And, when things get tangled up like this, they do come to us. But a great deal of the roadmap for how all this goes in is actually set out in state statute.
Can I ask a quick clarifying question?
Yeah, please.
That was really helpful information. Thank you. So my question is, in terms of the hearing as stated by this chapter, what are the current guidelines for that hearing? Is there a certain amount of time that's defined before development takes place for a public hearing to occur?
Yeah, those timelines are actually laid out in the state statute. At least as far as Chapter 87 goes, the tree has to be posted for a hearing at least 2 weeks in advance. Notice has to go into a paper of local distribution on 2 successive weeks. Trying to find a matter of doing that now with not too many newspapers available. And then I believe there's also some provision for posting in a public place, which when I was doing it, we'd post it downstairs here in Town Hall. That's all set up in state statute. And it's sort of similar timeframes that's set out under the scenic roads bylaw.
Anything else? Jim?
Just a final thought of appreciation for people thinking all this through, and a couple of final thoughts. One is that the process that we were in 2021 actually wasn't even a shade tree hearing. Shade tree hearings happen when a developer, an owner, comes to the town and says, you know, I need to take this tree down. I want to take this tree down. In this case, it was a resident who didn't own the trees or didn't own the development who came to the town and said, this is a safety issue. The town can decide to go ahead and take action on a safety issue without a formal shade tree hearing. So we get to make up our own process here. The last thought I had was, David, I'm reflecting on like what happens sometimes in our executive sessions where we're, you know, going through tricky negotiations with other parties. We often lay out, you know, general senses of where we want the negotiations to go, have the professionals go off and do it, and then they have to come back because we have to approve the final settlement, the final agreement. And looking at so I don't think that's a ridiculous process. I don't think it's ridiculous to send our staff out to try to negotiate something and then still come back to us for an okay or not. And when I look at I looked at both the tape, you know, the YouTube and the minutes, which aren't always the same, but in this case they both said that this matter will come back to the board, you know, to be looked at. So, you know, I still think there was a misstep in that last part. I agree with the sense that Dean and David has suggested that, you know, if we had had that discussion, you know, probably would have agreed with the plan. It wouldn't have been a unanimous vote, but, you know, at least 3-2 or 4-1. So I don't think the end result was any different, because we missed this step of having it on an agenda and actually taking a formal vote. But it was still a misstep that didn't allow us to hear each other's voices and concerns about it, and potentially the voices and concerns from the public about the particulars of the settlement. You know, we never really talked about whether, you know, how big is a significant tree, and is 4 oaks and 2 maples the right mix, and, you know, I mean, there could have been a really interesting and important series of questions, but we missed that chance this time. I don't think we'll miss it again because, you know, now we've said it out loud. That was it. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.
Going through this with me.
All set to move on? Great. Okay, we'll go to the consent items now. I'll read them. Please say hold if you'd like to hold one of them. Item 10, approve meeting minutes September 20th and October 4th, 2021. 11, approve executive session minutes October 11th, 2021. Item 12, approve letter of support for American Rescue Plan Act, ARPA funding from the Minuteman Advisory Group on Interlocal Communication, MAGIC. 13, committee appointment, Christopher Hardy, full member, Economic Development Committee, term to expire June 30th, 2024.
And I'll put a hold on that.
Ooh, okay. Committee reappointment, Thomas P. Beals, full member, Board of Registrars, term to expire 2024. Number 15, approve updated Recreation Commission charge. Number 16, approve grant of easements 288 Main Street. That's it. And so I will take a motion to approve items 10 through 12 inclusive and 14 through 16 inclusive.
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
Okay, all in favor of approving items 10, 11, 12, 14, 15, and 16, say aye.
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 Any opposed? Okay, item 13, Fran.
So I just wanted to have a change full member to associate. That's it.
Okay,
Should I read the whole thing?
I can do that.
Yeah.
So I'll take a motion to approve committee appointment Christopher Hardy, associate member, Economic Development Committee, term to expire June 30th, 2024. Someone just want to move?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
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 Any opposed? That passes. I will take a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.